No dignity. We will call this afternoon's TBR committee meetings to order with a big thanks to Emerson for classing up the joint, as we say, and providing some lovely piano music for us before we come in to do our meetings this afternoon. Emerson is a Pellissippi State student, so we thank him very much. Well, you guys, this Thursday, September 22, we have reached the first day of fall, and we're starting to feel it in the air just a little bit. I know it is with great relief after literally a long, hot summer. I want to make just a couple of announcements before we move into committee meetings. Just a reminder to all of the regents that we are being live streamed, and this meeting will be archived, of course. We also have a special guest with us today, although I think he's out doing a little work at the moment. But as some of you know, former Regent Greg Duckett has joined us on one last time for this meeting, for which we're very grateful. We look forward to honoring Greg tomorrow for his years of service to this organization. He resigned from our board because Governor Lee tapped him for additional service on the Health Services Development Agency board. But it's great of Greg to take the time and come be with us one last time. And most especially to Pellissippi State for hosting us today. I said to President Wise and his team, we know this is a lot of work and a lot of planning, and I know they're glad the day is here, and we are really proud to be here and to see this campus again. And most especially for me, I enjoyed taking in the new, what is still new, Bill Haslam Math and Science Center. It's incredibly impressive. To President Cheney at our Tcat Knoxville, I think all of us had a chance to head out and visit with her team for a minute and see that heavy equipment simulator from Cat, which was most impressive. And I think the mobile welding lab may be with us then at dinner tonight, so stand by for more on that. And new to our midst, and everyone has seen them on our Zoom meetings, but it's nice to be in person. Our new faculty regent, John Lee from Elizabethton, welcome again. And our new student regent, John Long from Hohenwald. And I've already apologized to them both, and I will inevitably get them mixed up. So just like Mark Gill and Mark George, I now have a John Long and a John Lee. So anyway, welcome. We're awfully glad you guys are here. Chancellor Tidings, any announcements from your end?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say thank you again to Tcat Knoxville and to Pellissippi State for hosting us today already. It's been an incredible morning. The tours were amazing. There's so much great work going on both of these campuses, and we are truly thankful to both of you for the great work that you do every single day.
Very nice. So we have a lot of work to do. Let's get underway because I know we're all looking forward to being at another one of our new facilities this afternoon down in Blount County, or rather for dinner, which will be exciting, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, I would like to turn to Regent Mary Lou Apple to launch our Academic Policies, Programs, and Student Life Committee, please, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm calling the Committee on Academic Policies and Programs and Student Life to order. And Secretary Perry, will you please call the roll?
Chair Apple.
Here.
Regent Lee.
Here.
Regent Shelton.
Here.
Regent Varlin. Here. And Regent White. Madam Chair, your committee is assembled and you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item is the proposed revisions to TBR Policy 3.05.01.00, classifying students in-state and out-of-state for paying college fees, tuition, and for admission purposes for the veteran. For this, I would like to call on Vice Chancellor Heidi Lemming.
Good afternoon. Yes, before you are revisions to the Tbr policy that is to align our policy with Public Chapter 791 that was passed during this last legislative session. It allows veterans or military affiliated individuals to receive in-state tuition. So changes in the policy are just to reflect alignment with the legislation that was passed.
Thank you. Can I ask for a motion for this? Thank you, Bridget Barlin. Second?
I'll second.
So do you have any discussion or questions for Dr. Lemming? Okay, let's call for a vote. And this can be a voice vote. All in favor, aye? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Lemming. For the review and consideration of some college strategic plans from Columbia State, Pellissippi State, and Southwest Tennessee Community College, I'd like to call on Executive Vice Chancellor Russ Deaton.
Thank you, Regent Apple, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, members of the board. Today we have 3 strategic plans for Columbia State, Pellissippi, and Southwest. As you know, you've seen these come before us in meetings past. We're actually almost through this entire cycle for community colleges. I think you have 4 more coming to you in December. But each of these plans has been presented to Dr. Tidings and staff for review. They all match up and link back to the TBR strategic plan. All of the campuses really engaged, both internal and external constituencies. And the action before you that we will recommend after you hear from each president will be to both approve the strategic plan and the accompanying mission statement that is included therein. So you will hear from each president sequentially, and if it pleases the chair, this intro can suffice for all 3 rather than me getting back up for each one. So with that, that is the background. The summaries are in your materials along with their presentation materials, and each of these have been vetted and look great, and we are going to be recommending all for approval today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to take Ann. I've got to look over to see where I'm at. It's a pleasure to be able to present our strategic plan to you. It's gone through quite a bit of study on the campus. As we work through this, we will talk about how we went about preparing the strategic plan, then what some of the major points in the strategic plan, as well as the strategies that go along with it, and then what our review process is, and then how that matches up to with Tbr policy. I'm going the wrong way. I don't want to make you sick because we moved through here. So, first off, it's our strategic plan, and it is one that has, we call it purposeful progression, looking to the future and how we're moving purposefully through the next 10 years. We had guiding ideologies. That was our mission statement, our commitment, our values that would guide us, our vision, our responsibility in looking at equity and the place that plays with our institution, and then our foundation, that foundation being student success. Everything is built around our students and the success of our students. Our development process. We reviewed our previous plan. We looked at our data as we reviewed that. We looked at our outcomes and where we were going. We engaged our campus. Our campus also reviewed the data, both faculty, staff, and students, and began to develop the direction they felt we needed to go. That went on through a leadership committee as well that began to finalize it or bring it down. We also engaged the community through meeting with various organizations and events, asking them where they felt like the institution should go in the next 10 years. And then we did a draft. We shared the draft back with all of the groups. It was revised, and then it went back out again and revised the next time until we finalized the plan. Strategic purposes, there are 3 in our plan. One is one college, looking at us as one college. And I'll go into each a little bit more detail here in a few minutes. Second is a student-ready college. And third is a community-ready college. And you'll notice we have a seal that has all 3, our strategic plan and then the 3 purposes that we have. So as a one college, we will function as one college to provide a consistent and successful student experience. As you all know, there are 5 campuses, and we are one college. So a large part of our discussion is centered on acting as one college, regardless of where the student goes. The student has one experience. It is a Columbia State experience. All together working makes one college. So what are some of the strategies that deal with the one college? There's service, communication, student life cycle, best practices, teaching methodologies, modern equipment, facilities, global equitable environment, fiscal sound financial practices, data, and as well as college environment. There's more, but those are the headers that make up that particular area. Again, making us one college, working as one for the student experience. The next one is student-ready college. Columbia State will prioritize students in development and delivery of instruction and services so the students are welcome, they're engaged, and supported inside and outside the classroom. The strategies: improved efficiencies, removing barriers, connecting students and goals, ensuring that there is access through outreach, review and modify processes, college programs meet their student needs, student support structures are there for success, that there is encouragement throughout the whole student life cycle, from the day they apply to the day they graduate to the day they transition to the day they go to work, and that there are successful and innovative instructional practices. Again, one college working together to be a student-ready college. The third one is the community-ready college. Columbia State will be an active participant in the development, growth of the service area, and the community will choose us as their first choice for being a partner. Strategies: pathways to employment, industry participation, foundation, friends, and financial support, enhanced services and campus improvement, and involve some grants. To be a partner with business and industry and graduate skills, to demand innovative, responsive programs, have collaborative projects, meet with our alumni and engage our alumni, and then have board community organization participation by our employees and staff. Again, becoming a community-ready college that is one college. So continuous review process for goal alignment. In developing it, we said we had to put into place a way that we continually look at our strategic plan to make sure it aligns with the changing environment that we work in. And so the plan being implemented in 21, in December of 23, there will be a review and renewal, or for renewal. December of 26, again, review for renewal. January 29, we will review and begin to initiate the process for the next plan. Throughout the process, we do have a college leadership council that is made up of representatives from across the campus, different departments, both professional support and faculty. Then we continually have an annual data day in December where we're looking at data. We look at our goals and our strategies to see if we need to tweak them every year, but with a larger review and the plan as we have laid out here. This is a diagram that shows how our one college goals and strategies align with those of TBR. Then how our student-ready strategies align with the TBR strategic plan. And then the community-ready relationship between the TBR plan and the Columbia State plan. So that's kind of fast, and but questions you might have that I can give further explanation to. And I apologize for having to tip up and down.
We'll get you a step next time.
Okay?
So, President Smith, first of all, from the committee, we want to say thank you. This represents hours and hours of work on behalf of your entire college to make this presentation and to incorporate it into your environment, into your structure. So we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
We will move on this right now. I ask a motion from the committee to accept Columbia State Strategic Plan. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for President Smith? All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, President Smith.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Apple and members of the Board of Regents. I wonder if I might take a moment to welcome Vice Chair Reynolds and Chancellor Tidings and all of the Board of the Regents and members of the TBR staff, and then our colleagues from across the state. We're so happy to have you here at Pellissippi State. It is a lot of hard work to get ready for, but it's really important that we have these meetings on our campuses. So we're so glad you're here with us at Pellissippi State, and we're happy to host you. Hope you're in for a great day. There are plenty of snacks behind you, but we are having our culinary students cook for dinner for you tonight, so use discretion. All right. It's my pleasure to be before this committee to present the Pellissippi State Strategic Plan for 2020 to 2025. I will note that it was developed just prior to the pandemic, so we've had to think about that as we've moved through it. I think one of the advantages is that we built into the approach reviewing it periodically on 18-month cycles, asking for updates and reports from the various groups that are component parts of that plan. But certainly some of the goals and targets we set have been affected by what we've all been through the last couple of years. The plan was developed by an ad hoc committee of our much larger strategic planning committee. This is a picture of neither. This is a picture of the employees of Pellissippi State from about 2017. The work of the committee was really driven and heavily influenced by our work with Achieving the Dream and some of the other strategic initiatives put forth by the Board of the Regents. One of the things I'm most pleased with in terms of our work at Pellissippi State over the course of the last couple of years, and despite of the pandemic, is really working on aligning not just our strategic plan, but with the strategic enrollment process through TBR, the work that we're trying to do with QEP, with Achieving the Dream, and our own quality enhancement plan, really focusing on how we can increase student success overall, but focusing on our under-resourced students, our underrepresented students, and our underprepared students. That's really at the heart of our strategy. This is the mission of Pellissippi State Community College. It was reaffirmed by our strategic planning committee at our meeting in June. It was also reviewed as part of our SAC-COC reaffirmation visit last fall. I think the key words there for us that we focus on, and certainly I focus on when I talk about this, is the goal of the institution to provide a transformative environment, both for the individual and the community. How do we create those opportunities for students to have what we hope is a life-changing experience on one of our campuses at Pellissippi State, and that by doing so, that really helps change the community we serve here in Knox and Blount County. These are the values that stand behind our mission, and you'll see them reflected throughout the plan. Our plan was really built on 3 strategic priorities. I think they're in line with the priorities of the board overall. First focusing on growth, and of course, again, pre-pandemic, we were planning on growing in enrollment. We've had some certainly challenges, as many institutions have over the course of the last couple of years. We've certainly want to focus on student success, and it's really at the center of our work and the work of this system. Want to make sure that we increase success in our general education courses, fall-to-fall retention and graduation rates in terms of large, big picture items, and then again, trying to reduce those equity gaps. How do we help our under-resourced students? How do we help our underprepared students? How do we help our underrepresented students as we work to increase student success at the institution overall? Our plan is really a component of a set of smaller plans and actions that are built into it. So first and foremost, in terms of its importance, is our Student Strong Plan. We also have thought about the relationship of having a strong and dedicated faculty and staff to carry out the mission of the institution and what an employee strong plan would look like. And then clearly, when we think about the mission of TBR and student success and workforce development, it's also important at Pellissippi State that we have a workforce strong plan. Those strategies, those plans are undergirded by what we call mission capacity. How do we create the resources across the institution as a whole to carry out the work that we want to do as an institution in the community? Touch briefly on some of the goals within each of those plans. Overall institutional goals, again, established pre-pandemic, increase enrollment by headcount by 4% over the 5-year period, increase student retention over the 5-year period, increase part-time student retention over the 5-year period, and increase the graduation rate and transfer rate. We've had some challenges with the first three. I can report we've actually increased slightly the 3-year graduation rate over the course of the last couple of years and actually increased our transfer rate to 4-year institutions during the same time period. That may be as much a reflection of this kind of students who are enrolled at this particular point in time, but we did see some success in there. We're going to celebrate that while we can note it on the board. Some of the goals within the Student Strong Plan that kind of build that out, creating clearly defined academic pathways in a number of different modes, and really this is one of the things we've spent a lot of time focusing over the course of the last 6 months. Trying to create integrated pathways both on campus and in our community. It will be a feature of our work going forward. We want to continue to make sure we increase student success in our gen ed courses and make sure we have a safe and inclusive environment for all of those who study on our campuses. Other elements of the Student Strong goals: expanding educational opportunities and providing a variety of learning experiences inside and outside the classroom. Some of the things that you may have seen, and we'll talk about more, we've become much more involved in Skills USA and intend to do that. We've had a lot of conversation about high impact practices. I think one of the great joys of this job is participating in commencement and shaking the hands of students as they walk across the stage. And when I ask students about their experience at Pellissippi State, every one of them can name the 3 or 4 people in the particular program and the couple of events during their time at the institution that really help them propel themselves to success. Our challenge is making sure we get more students in that pipeline, and we're really working to create that integrated system and structure of support to make those pathways clearer, to make sure that the contact points, the communication structures, the team is built out to make sure our students can persist along that way at a rate that we would like them to do so. Our employee strong goals include developing a workforce that reflects the demographics of our region. We've done great work in terms of developing and designing a comprehensive faculty and staff professional development program. We've long had a new faculty academy. In the last couple of years, we've developed a Pellissippi Academy for our employees, where we provide professional development opportunities on campus that allow them to grow as leaders, regardless of the position that they hold at the institution, and then finding ways of celebrating their success and recognizing them for their great work. I think our workforce goals, strong goals, are going to become even more integrated with our student success goals when we think about the way we've reimagined the Pellissippi State in terms of the RFP response that we've presented, but how can we think about career technical education in different ways? How can we provide workforce experiences for all of our students and look for ways of increasing our impact in the community in terms of providing a great workforce for Knox and Blount counties. Mission capacity goals really are those elements that we sort of undergird all this work with how do we improve communication, how do we make sure everybody understands our values, how do we manage our resources in a way that meets the priorities we've established, how do we maximize the use of the infrastructure we have wonderful facilities, how do we make sure that we're using them to the best of our abilities, and then how do we provide a safe environment. This is what we believe is a good representation of that work. This circle reflects our institutional mission on the outside, our college values, the plans we've developed in terms of our strategy, and then what we hope our students will accomplish during their time with us at Pellissippi State. We hope that we can create an environment where they'll start strong and stay strong and finish strong. I'm grateful for all the people at this institution that help us try to achieve that. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, Chair Apple, or from the members of the committee.
Any questions? Again, go ahead, Mark.
First off, thanks. Great reception. Been a good morning, so thanks for that. It seems to me that there is becoming more of an emphasis of the CTE here. Is that right? Is that a strategic preparing for the workforce more than maybe four-year colleges, or how would you?
Yeah, it's a good question. If you think about Pellissippi State historically, we actually started as State Technical Institute with 3 programs in engineering, chemical, electrical, mechanical. We added business programs on that career technical side in the early 80s. When we moved to this campus in 1986, we became a comprehensive community college, and a lot of the growth in the 80s and 90s was through transfer articulation agreements with the University of Tennessee. But I think there's certainly a strong push. You'll see it tonight when we go to the Ruth and Steve West Workforce Development Center in Blount County. How can we partner with the 3 school systems in that county to create stronger CTE pathways from the high school programs into Tcat Knoxville, who's a great partner of us at that institution, and then into Pellissippi State as well. There's also an opportunity for us here in Knox County. They're developing 865 academies around their career technical programs, and so we really need to be strong partners at the table, again, along with our Tcat Knoxville colleagues, to make sure that we're aligning those opportunities and resources and having real conversations with students about, hey, when you come to Pellissippi State, here are your choices, right? Might be a short-term workforce training program. It might be an AAS that leads to a degree in welding or mechanical engineering, and you're going into the workforce, or it might be that you complete a transfer degree. But for the last 20 years or so, we've been balanced about 2/3 of our students for transfer, 1/3 towards career. It'll be interesting to see how that changes over the next 5 years.
Just a comment. When you go into the high schools, take your race car with you.
Absolutely, that's part of the plan. Absolutely. They do workshops. Yeah, we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Good idea. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion for acceptance of President Wise's strategic plan for Pellissippi. Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Thank you, President Wise, and to your entire team.
Thank you.
Our thanks.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Apple, Vice Chair Reynolds, Dr. Tidings, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to present to you the work that Southwest Tennessee Community College has engaged in over the past year or so to prepare our strategic plan. So it's my pleasure to present this to you. So what I'll do today is just talk really briefly about how we developed our plan, the pandemic's impact on the plan, how we focused on integration and alignment, the stakeholder engagement that we went throughout the entire year, where we engaged faculty and staff on what works, what doesn't work. I'll pull out just a few of our goals, tactics, and how it aligns to the state performance metrics, and then finally present to you our mission statement, our revised mission statement. So the plan was developed. It's really a continuation of our Focus 2020 work that we did with Achieving the Dream, in which we had a big goal, a big audacious goal to redesign, reset, and redesign, reinvent, and reset the student experience. And so we continued that work because it started in 2016, but 2020, 4 years is not enough to say that we've reached our goals. So we continued our focus on students, our focus on the community, and focus on excellence. The pandemic really has impacted Southwest. Our enrollment has declined nearly 30%. Our underserved community, we have seen how they have really been devastated even more by the pandemic. So it's taken a toll on our enrollment. It's taken a toll on our revenue as well. So we really had to, with this plan, really focus on just a short period of time. How do we work to increase our enrollment and make sure that we are really healthy as a college in terms of meeting the needs of our students and of our community. And so while there are a lot of things that we could focus on, we determined that as far as our resources are concerned, in terms of financial resources, human resources, and space resources, we would allocate those resources to 4 key areas: student recruitment, student retention, safety, and compliance. So we have a planning and budget council. We've really been working over the past few years to increase our governance bodies and to make sure that there's engagement across the college. And so we developed a planning and budget council. And what this planning and budget council, the intention was to bring all of the plans together. We have a lot of plans, a lot of areas with their own plans. Some areas, the plans are formal or informal, but we needed to bring everyone together to make sure we're all on the same page. Again, we do not have the resources to continue to do what we've always done. So we have to really get very intentional and very strategic. And so I needed to bring everyone together. We have the planning and budget council, and if you see on the screen all the various plans that we have, and people sometimes talk to each other or sometimes they do not. So with this planning and budget council, we're bringing everyone together, aligning all of our campus plans, making sure it's in alignment with the TBR strategic plan, as well as our SACS COC regional accreditation standards. SACS is very clear on what institutions are supposed to do with, as it relates to planning, continuous quality improvement. And so we had to make sure that that is also a focal point of our plan, as well as the state performance outcomes and metrics. Everyone in the campus at the college needs to understand how we move the needle, and they all should know by now what those performance metrics are. And so with the stakeholder engagement, college-wide conversations, so we had, higher ed is really good about adding more initiatives and maybe not as good about what do we not do. And so those conversations took place throughout all of the departments. What's working? What have we found that's really moving the needle in those areas of student recruitment, student retention, safety, compliance? What's working? So we looked at the data to show how well we're doing in some areas and how we're not doing so well in some areas. So we looked at, for example, with our student enrollment, we've done a pretty good job of first-year retention, getting students from a recruit and into being enrolled in their first year. Not so good at getting them to the finish line. And so we had to celebrate what we're doing well, but be really honest about what we need to improve upon. So we had those deep dive conversations, again, data-informed conversations about what is working and what's not working. What do we stop doing? The what do we stop doing was harder of a conversation, maybe surprisingly, because people hold on to things that we've done for years and it's just a part of the culture, but it's not working. And so we do not have the resources to really direct in those areas at this point in our history pointed up at the college, So we've had to stop some things. We gathered input from campus governance groups. You see the president's cabinet. We meet quarterly, and you have all the representatives from the various employee groups, student groups, again, the Planning and Budget Council. We talked extensively with our chamber. We've gotten labor market data. Our chamber gave a really great presentation to the Planning and Budget Council about careers that are industries that we need to focus on in the Memphis area and Tennessee, and so that was very helpful to the Planning and Budget Council. Has been helpful to the college. Also, our advisory committees in our CTE programs have been very helpful in informing our work as well. And so here are just a few of the goals I've just kind of pulled out to show how we have looked at, again, very intentional about what is working. So one of the things we discovered with goal 1, our focus on students, is that advising works and career services works. But what we hadn't been doing was combining the two. We were waiting too late to talk about careers, career services. And so we have been, not that it hasn't been done in fits and starts, depending on the person, but we really had to be intentional about combining those conversations. And so that is what we're in the process of doing, is implementing a new academic advising and career services model. So we're going to start talking on the front end more intentionally about career pathways. So students, again, we are seeing that we're getting them to that first year, but we're not getting them to the finish line. And so we need to be more intentional about our work. That tactic is aligned with the state's performance metrics to increase progression, 12 credit hours, 24 credit hours, and 36 credit hours for our students. Again, those are the challenges that we've had historically, and so we need to address them. In goal 2, focus on community. One of the things that we saw that's working, or that was not working in the way that we needed it to, we had a center of emphasis. And that center of emphasis had been in existence for 30 years. No one really had focused on it. It's just been what we've always had. And it's done a really nice job of working inside business and industry to help with performance. But where we are now in the life of the college and the needs that we have in our community, we really needed to focus on being more responsive to our business leaders, as we hear from our chamber all the time that we need to have accelerated coursework programs. We need to have shorter certificates. And so we needed to reallocate the dollars that were going towards our 30-year center of emphasis and redesign that center of emphasis, and that's what we've done. And we now are calling it the Southwest Workforce Solutions. It's our center of emphasis, and really what that is what the college is going to be about. This Southwest Center of Emphasis is going to look at how we educate our students, and we're going to blur the lines between non-credit or workforce and credit. Too long we've had the silos between the two, and what we saw is that we would have students enrolling in our workforce or non-credit courses, about 5,000 students that we were not engaging. They would come and take a class or two, and we weren't helping them to see the path that if you take one class, you can then move on to a credit program. And so that was a gap where we're losing students. It just wasn't working for us, and so we're changing that. And so that is really the emphasis of the college. Everything coming together is one point of entry. Learning is learning. It doesn't matter how you start. We just want to get you to your goal and to the finish line. The outcome that's aligned to state performance outcomes, increasing 1 to 2 year certificates and job placements, increase short-term certificates, increase job placements, and increase workforce training contact hours. Again, those are state performance metrics. And then our final goal, focus on excellence, just pulling out one of those areas, high quality teaching and learning. And so the tactic is to align faculty professional development with critical needs. So we have a really strong teaching and learning center. They do a really fantastic job. But again, given where we are now with a decline in enrollment, decline in resources, we have to be even more intentional about the professional development that's offered through our teaching and learning center. And so we have to make sure that when we're talking about faculty professional development, even staff professional development as well, it has to be aligned to what we've said we're going to focus on: recruitment, retention, safety, compliance. One of our challenges is making sure that people understand that SAC-COC is not something that we just happen to do and that we just kind of pay attention to. You have to understand that if we are not an accredited institution, we cease to exist. And so those are the types of trainings that we have to conduct for our faculty. Aligning the outcomes, our tactics with the outcomes, the state outcomes. There's something called the quality assurance funding. Again, that's something that we work closely to make sure that our faculty understand that in terms of our QAF funding, there's general education assessment, student learning and engagement, adult learner success, and Tennessee job market graduate placement. A lot of our faculty have not been even aware of what that even means. And so that's the type of professional development that we need to make sure faculty understand, that when we are pushing things that maybe at the senior staff level, we need to help them to understand the reason why it's important. The reason why we're focusing on it is because it's aligned to the state. So just that whole alignment of what we're doing at the college to what's happening at the state level, to what's happening nationally with SAC-COC, we have to do a better job of doing it at the college level. And then finally, our revised mission statement, in which we really wanted to state who we are and what we want to be to the community. At Southwest Tennessee Community College, community is our middle name. As a teaching, learning, and equity-centered college, our students pursue associate's degree and technical certificates and engage in workforce development training to prepare them for the demands of an evolving marketplace. Our ability to change and adapt to uplift our students and serve our community makes us unique. At Southwest, we believe everyone deserves an opportunity. That's who we are, and that's who we want the community to know us to be. So, I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for President Hall?
Hey Tracy, out of the three goals that you mentioned, if you could choose one, like what's that one that's going to make all of the difference for a bigger stride?
The Southwest Workforce Center, because it's going to integrate everything. Everything, so the advising and the career pathways, that's the one that is our signature initiative. We have to get it all together, all aligned, because we are losing students. When you're not, one office is not talking to another, when there are silos, even though everyone is working hard, it's not maybe the smartest way. And so we've discovered that there are enrollment funnels where students are just getting caught in those funnels. Again, as I mentioned, that we have the non-credit or the workforce students, that we have an opportunity to reach out to the students to say, you've come and you've taken a workforce class, here's additional training and education that we offer. And so if we're not talking to each other, students are falling through the cracks, and we're not serving the students or the community as best as we can. So goal number 2.
Any other questions, Mark?
Was that 30% drop, was it gradual or just?
It was immediate. As soon as with our fall enrollment, I'm thinking it's 2020, we saw students are just not coming back. Yeah. And some of that we've been telling ourselves, it's because of jobs or COVID and all of that, and some of that is true. We've recently had a consultant to come in to look at our processes even deeper, and we saw that some of it is still self-inflicted. And so students are, again, these silos. We've done the work with Achieving the Dream in 2015, 2016, but again, people change. People that were here in 2016 are no longer here, and so we have to do more with continuous training so that new people come on board. They know about the processes, but sometimes processes become outdated, and we have to do something different, and so that's what we're doing now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
President Hall, of the 30%, is there a concentration like in non-credit, or is there a concentration in certain disciplines? Or is it just across the board?
It's pretty much across the board. The majority of our students transfer to a 4-year colleges. And so we've just seen, when we've looked at all of the different areas, there's just a drop. We've seen mainly our African-American male population has really taken a hit in terms of their returning to the college. But just across the board, we've just had some challenges.
Why is that with the African-American male? Any explanation for why they just decided it isn't for them or something?
Well, I think a lot of reasons that we tell ourselves anecdotally, and we've even reached out when we started talking. We formed a group that reached out to African American males, and they would tell us things like, as they're working, they have other needs that they need to tend to, and it's not coming to school. We had at the same time during COVID, our largest feeder school was virtual. And so parents were making decisions to take care of their children's education and putting theirs on the back burner. Also, we have what I guess we still are calling a gig economy. And so when you're looking at students and they're saying Amazon or whatever, they're paying $20, $25 an hour, I can go and work there now, because the focus is on what they need now, and we're trying to help them to understand that yes, now is important, but also the future, and so a career, and you can do both. And so that's a lot of it. We're kind of competing in some ways with workforce, because they're seeing that I can make money now. Why should I go and take classes when I can make more money right today? I'm hungry today. I need right now. So we're trying to say you can do them. You can do both.
Do you see the Amazons and other businesses linking up with you during this time? I mean, are they willing to push the agenda of, we're grateful that you're working with us now, but we'd like to see you get skilled?
Yes, and I believe, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I believe we are working with Amazon on such an initiative that we are working to work with their employees. You can still go, and they're taking care of tuition, and it's not just a short-term view of your life. But we understand the short-term view, but if you want a career progression, getting an additional post-secondary credential would be beneficial. Great. So I think we can work in collaboration with business and industry on that.
Good idea. Yes. Any further questions? We want to say thank you, President Hall, to you and your entire team for the efforts and the time and the energy that you put into this, and it's certainly got a lot of challenges and opportunities.
Yes, thank you so much.
Do I hear a motion to accept the strategic plan from Southwest?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? To hear a second? Thank you. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 5 on the agenda is the proposed program terminations, modifications, and new technical program implementations at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. And I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Jonathan E. Reed.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Reynolds, Regent Apple, Chancellor Tidings, and board members. I'm glad here to present to you our Tcat program approvals. And just as a note, you all knew Ms. Jothany Blackwood. My husband insisted I become Jothany Reed. So you will see that designated on any materials by presenting that. So I just wanted to share the new name. So the Office of Academic Affairs is bringing forward 23 program proposals to you and 7 program modifications for the committee's review and approval. This is in accordance with Tbr Policy 2.01.02.00. And it's also in compliance with COE, which requires documentation from this governing agency. These proposals allow the Tcats to be more responsive to the needs of our students, our businesses, and industries. For September, you will be looking at 23 new program proposals, and as well as 7 academic actions that were submitted as only notification to the Vice Chancellor. We're also highlighting 3 programs approved through interim action in August, as well as 2 academic actions. All documentation for these proposals are in your materials. At this time, Dr. Tashakin Hollins will give a brief highlight of those programs for your approval.
Good afternoon, Regent Apple, Vice Chancellor Reynolds, I hope you can hear me, Chancellor Tidings, all those of the board, and distinguished guests. As Dr. Reed stated, the work that we do in the Office of Academic Affairs aligns with Tbr Policy 2010200, and the board reserves to its right the authority to review and approve all of these proposed actions that are before you. The board's support of academic programs, the development of them and the expansion of them promotes open access, completion, and community and workforce development, which are the themes of the TBR strategic plan. This work aligns to the Drive to 55 goals and assists us in fulfilling our mission of student success and workforce development. To make the best products, you need the best people. Tcats are committed to producing a highly skilled workforce. Tcats create steady pipelines to qualified candidates for approximately 56% of jobs in Tennessee that require some education from high school, but less than a 4-year degree. The 23 new program proposals and program expansions and 7 program modifications before you today demonstrates Tcat's dedication to aligning academic programs to workforce needs. Also, to satisfy the requirements of COE, which is the accrediting body for the Tcats, the Office of Academic Affairs has carefully reviewed all the program proposals, and as Dr. Reed stated, those materials are before you. In response to the governor's $5 million investment to expand correctional officer training, we have a total of 19 Tcats implementing correctional officer training programs. However, before you today, there are 16 proposals for you to consider. And thank you again for approving the 3 program proposals that came before you last month through interim action. So these are the 16 schools that are looking to propose and implement that are proposed but are looking to implement in the spring of 23 or summer of 23. Tcat Elizabethton is proposing a new collision repair technology program to fulfill a workforce need and will offer this program to adult students, middle college students, and traditional dual enrollment students at its Kingsport Extension campus. Tcat Oneida Huntsville is proposing a new cosmetology instructor program to fill a pipeline of qualified board-certified instructors needed to satisfy the present and ongoing demand for cosmetology programs at both the secondary and post-secondary level for that particular region. TBR and our colleges have been engaged in strategic conversations with various industry leaders to align our academic programs with in-demand occupations. TBR was contacted by massage therapy industry leaders looking to expand training at our colleges. As a result of those conversations, several of our colleges are exploring their approach to implementing programs to meet labor demands. I am pleased to share with you all Tcat Memphis has been involved in those discussions and has a proposal before you today to implement the massage therapy program. Tcat Chevyville is proposing to implement the nursing aide or quality specialist, also known as QUILTS program, at 3 of their teaching locations and expanding the industrial electricity program to now include residential and commercial training. Also included in your materials includes a notification of 7 program modifications previously approved and notified to the Office of Academic Affairs. As you can see, the proposed actions before you today allow the Tcats to be more responsive to workforce needs by aligning education with careers. The Office of Academic Affairs respectfully requests the board's approval, and I'm available to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve these modifications and approvals. Thank you. Second? Thank you. All in favor, aye. All opposed? Thank you. It passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
For a synopsis of the institutional mission profiles, I would like to call on Executive Vice Chancellor Russ Deaton.
Thank you, Regent Apple. So the institutional mission profiles go back to actually the Complete College Tennessee Act of 2010. And in that act, which you'll probably recall, was one of the seminal moments in higher education history. It introduced the outcomes-based funding formula, Tennessee transfer pathways, and another provision of that act was for each public university and community college to submit for approval by both its board and THEC an institutional mission profile annually. Those profiles, as you see in your materials, try to just give the distinctive nature of each college. Who does it serve? What is its service area geographically? What is its program mix? What are some distinctive features of it? For instance, Southwest mentions its Bellwether Award from a few years ago, or the Jackson State cybersecurity arena that it has. That's a center of excellence. So those profiles, again, try to give the user a sense of what the college is and who it serves. Those are both reviewed by staff. They are then discussed with the college if necessary for any corrections, presented to you here in your materials for approval, and if approved, they will go to THEC at their quarterly meeting in November to fulfill our statutory duty for those. So that is the background. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve? Second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Deaton. And last, our Tennessee's for review of the Tennessee Post-Secondary Skills USA Annual Report. I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Heidi Lehman.
Well, real quickly, I want to share highlights from our annual report. There's a copy in your board materials, so I'm just going to do the highlights, but we've got some exciting things that have happened with Skills USA. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. There we go. All right, Skills USA ended our last academic year with very strong participation from our campuses. We had over 8,457 members. That is the largest college post-secondary membership in the country. We also had a total of 34 of our colleges submit their membership for the academic year. So we're really excited about that membership. And I would normally introduce you to our state director, Shana Williard. She is actually in Chattanooga doing an industry partner meeting today. You haven't had a chance to meet her because she started during COVID. But I want to share a little bit with you about her because she's doing some amazing work for us. She started in her role as a director in July of 2021. She's actually been in my office since 2019. She was a student success coordinator for several years, and she comes to us from a background in the Sumner County School District doing CTE courses for 7 years. So this is her passion, and she's very well suited to do this role. Also want to share our state officer team. You can see that we have really good representation from across the state. And these are officers that we hope you get a chance to meet in person sometime soon, but wanted to share that with you. One of the things that we do annually is we hold a Leadership Training Institute. We had one in person and virtually the last couple of years. This year will be in person in October as well. It is a partnership that we have developed now with our Student Government Association officers. So they get together and they talk about not only networking, but other activities that they're doing at their institutions, learning from each other, and making plans for their annual program of work. This clicker's not liking me. All right. We also every year do a Day on the Hill. This is part of our SOAR activities, so you may be familiar with this. This is an opportunity for the students to meet with legislators, advocate for career and technical education, and then attend education committee meetings. We had a really good student turnout this last year from several institutions across the state in March. We also do a National Signing Day. All of our schools have the opportunity to participate in this event. We hold one through Skills USA, and we held a second one through what we call NC3. Want to highlight Tcat Harriman. They had 50 students attend their signing day. Those students sign a letter of intent to attend the college and pursue a career in skilled trades. So that was very exciting for Harriman this year. We like to always recognize our chapters who do exceptionally well within the Skills USA organization, and our top level award is the Model of Excellence chapter, and that went to Tcat Pulaski this year. It's very exciting news for them. They were also recognized at the national conference. We had 3 gold chapter distinctions: Montlow State, Tcat Chattanooga, and Tcat Hartsville, and a quality chapter, Tcat Shelbyville, and that is a recognition of their integration of the Skills USA framework in chapter program and work activities. We also recognize our Advisor of the Year. This year it is Mike Mercer from Tcat Chattanooga. He was recognized at our state skills competition. And really, this recognizes professionals in the association who are empowering students to become world-class leaders and responsible American citizens. And so this is a really big honor. And if you get a chance sometime to be at Tcat Chattanooga and meet Mike, you'll know why he received that award. And then we have 2 final activities we want to highlight. The first is our State Leadership and Skills Conference. Again, had to put a little bit of a pause there for a few years, but we were back in person this last spring in Chattanooga in April. 1,800 participants. You can see there the number of Skills USA student members and advisors. Over 300 business and industry partners are there. Want to extend the invitation. We always welcome board members to come to that competition, see what the students are up to. It's a really exciting event. And so as we plan forward for 2023, if you're interested, please let us know and we'll get you details to attend. And our culminating event for us is our National Leadership Skills Competition. It was held in Atlanta. We had several presidents attend. You can see here, we did extremely well. I am happy to say that we placed 88% of our competitors in the top 10. That also places us as the top post-secondary competitors in the nation. So happy to report that. You can see the number of medals that our institutions received, their students received. And so it was a really exciting time. Again, if you ever want to check that out, you'd be welcome to join us for that event as well. I'll give you the contact information for the folks, for Shana, if you are interested in wanting to learn more. And I might take a moment of privilege to share one more exciting thing that happened yesterday. We held our first podcast here at Pellissippi State. It's from the Vice Chancellor's Shelf, is what we call the series. We had a live audience that attended, and we will be releasing the link to the podcast shortly. It'll be out next week. But had Dr. Brian Noland from ETSU and Dr. Anthony Wise from Pellissippi talk about disruptive transformation, what that means as a president, and how they've worked through that, lessons learned, and personal experiences. So I encourage you to check out that podcast when we release that. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I attended the live podcast yesterday, and it was awesome. Heidi was magnificent. I've not seen her in that role, and then she shared that she has a mass communication majors in her undergraduate, but it was very well done. Your leadership in terms of facilitating that was just excellent, and of course, Dr. Nolan and Dr. Wise were too. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and just commend you and congratulate you for a great job.
Thank you.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Dr. Lemon, thank you very much. Skills USA, I'm so excited to see what we've done with Skills USA and how we've come back this year. As a product of Skills USA myself, I was a state competitor, I was an officer, and I can tell you that I encourage each and every person to attend Skills USA, but more importantly, what it does for our students on their communication skills and their ability to enter the workforce is absolutely unbelievable. So I'm super excited to see that we're back in back in full swing of everything, and everything went very smoothly this year. If you get a chance to attend, I would encourage you to.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark?
Congratulations on the Skills USA success nationwide. My son is also a product of that program. It was very helpful to him. And for us to top the nation in it as a state is big stuff. And as employers thrive on being able to go to situations, train, find kids know what to expect when they're actually going out in the workforce and being productive. And I can't say enough good things about what you all are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lemming. It is exciting to be there. I've attended a few, and it's excellent to see our students. This was informational only, so I'll move to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Apple, and to the committee. Good work. And before we move on, round of applause for Skills USA and all the good stuff going on. Well done. Thank you all. Well, before I turn this to Regent Varlin, we have one small announcement. This week, grandchild number, how many? 6 arrived. Stella Elizabeth Varlin came in at 8 pounds and 1 ounce. I got to see a picture of her, and she is beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you.
Is that going home today?
Oh, very good.
5 girls, 1 boy.
That's fun.
I know.
That's great fun. Well, when you are ready, you may call your committee to order.
I am ready, and thank you. They're going home today, and I'm just beside myself. All right, so I'd like to call the meeting of the External Affairs Committee to order and thank everyone for participating and being here today. And I want to ask Secretary Perry to call the roll.
Regent Apple.
Here.
Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Powers.
Here.
Chair Varlin.
Here.
And Regent Wamp.
Here.
Madam Chair, your committee's assembled and you have a quorum.
Well, thank you so much. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick up to the microphone. We are so glad to see you, Kim. Yes, yes. And she's going to give our report, but most of all, it's just great to see your sweet, smiling face.
Well, thank you so much. And Chancellor, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chair Lady Varlin, members of the board, and everyone in the back. It is wonderful to be here with you all today. And I do want to take this moment just to thank everyone for I can tell you I don't remember who I thanked and who I didn't back then because the days were pretty fuzzy. But thank you for the gift cards, the thoughts, the prayers. My husband and I both are so appreciative to have such wonderful friends, which is what I consider all of you. So thank you again. But today we will be reviewing the legislative priorities and the legislative requests that as a group we have assembled for you all to be able to take a look and see what we have going forward in the next session. As you know, every year we assemble system-wide legislative priorities that are before you. They're broad-based in nature. They are essentially the 6 pillars that our department in External Affairs drives toward with our advocacy efforts with both the legislature and in some cases the administration. These priorities before you, very similar to those of last year, are based on input from campus representatives. They are from the president, system office staff, the chancellor herself, you as regents, and other stakeholders across Tennessee. So rather than read those to you right now, if you want to take a look at the 6 pillars, basically we're looking at equitable funding for our campuses, for expanding access, for enhancing campus safety and security, making sure that we are able to be flexible and nimble in response to the needs of the community and the business and industry in our areas. And also, of course, we want to always encourage professional development for strong faculty and staff across the system. Now let's move on to those actual legislative requests. Again, from the feedback we have received from all stakeholders, our TBR leadership team has created a set of potential legislative requests that support the overarching priorities that you saw earlier. These will be expanded upon. I'm going to go ahead and summarize them for you now, but they will be expanded upon during the next committee, the Finance Committee led by Alicia Fox. So our first request will be related to education and workforce alignment. We would like to pursue legislation to provide funding for a pilot program that provides financial aid for both for short-term workforce training in high-demand areas. We're very excited about telling you in a moment about those. And then next, this one is extremely important across the state of Tennessee, mobilizing the Tennessee nursing workforce. We're talking about expansion of programs in pre-practical nursing and practical nursing at Tcats, as well as the expansion of AAS nursing programs at community colleges. Also, we see in the world of enrollment and success challenges that our campuses have had, and we all know that they have had those. We're looking at student support networks, modernizing the learning experience, telling the Tennessee higher ed story, dual enrollment expansion for both the Tcats and the community colleges, and then making financial aid more efficient. And then in campus safety and security, we would propose legislation to support the establishment of enhanced campus safety and security measures, including both equipment upgrades for our campuses and an emergency communications system as well. Chair Lady Varlin and committee members, this concludes our summary of the presentation. These are basically our collective thoughts for your review as a body. We, again, will not be asking this committee or the full board to vote on these particular priorities, but we will be asking you to affirm them. Later in Alicia Fox's presentation, that will be different when we get to the actual fiscal impact of these legislative requests. If there are no questions at this point, this concludes my remarks. Chair Varlin.
Anybody have any questions at all? Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor, and we are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
You were a model of efficiency this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, I had all to do with it.
Oh, with Regent Duckett's departure, I have asked for today, Yolanda Green will pull double duty. I have asked Regent Green if she would serve as the interim chair of Finance and Business Operations, and I'm very grateful. The floor is yours.
All right, I'll have big shoes to fill with Greg, so no expectations here. Mariah, will you go ahead and call the roll?
Regent George.
Here.
Regent Gill.
Here.
Chair Green.
Here.
Regent Wamp.
Here.
And Regent White. Madam Chair, your committee is assembled and you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We have 3 items on the business agenda today. The first item, as Vice Chancellor just related to, is a presentation of the TBR system state funding requests for 2023-2024. This presentation is an expansion of the government relations legislative priorities that were presented at our earlier External Affairs Committee meeting. I will ask that Vice Chancellor Alicia Fox, along with Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick and Russ Deaton, as well as Vice Chancellor Jontany Reed, to join us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chancellor, Vice Chair Reynolds, and Chairperson Green, as well as all the members of the committee. So today, as Vice Chancellor McCormick just mentioned in her earlier committee update, we are going to be presenting the legislative priorities and then the legislative request, i.e. the budget request, that we have developed following feedback from our stakeholders. So our presentation, as Chair Green just said, is an expansion of what Dr. McCormick just presented in the External Affairs Committee, with the exception of expanding on those topics a little bit and including the fiscal note that goes with each one of those. So this is going to be a tag team presentation with myself and the other vice chancellors presenting their areas of expertise in these different initiatives. So we will be presenting 3 key areas and 8 requests to you today, totaling approximately $51.7 million. That'll be $38 million recurring and $13.7 million non-recurring. So at this time, I will ask Dr. McCormick to please come up to discuss the education and workforce alignment initiatives.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Fox. So this is the initiative that I mentioned earlier, an education and workforce alignment. We talked about pursuing legislation to provide for 3 pilots, 1 in each Grand Division, that will provide financial aid for those short-term workforce training programs in the high-demand areas. Total 1.5 million non-recurring, because it is a pilot, it's one time. And again, we envision 1 in East, 1 in West, 1 in Middle. Competitive process for our campuses to be able to apply to be that pilot school. We're looking at programs that include things like lineman training, EMT, CNA, phlebotomy, also truck driving could potentially fit into this as well, depending on where it's offered. We did have a legislator last year that ran legislation, or was running legislation. He ended up pulling it, I believe, to be able to try to support this at Columbia State, right, President Smith? And I think it was around 1.5 to be able to do that for the lineman program. But we do, for instance, with lineman programs, we know we have at least 4 across the state in both Tcats and community colleges. And these are programs that lead straight to a job very quickly with an amazing salary. So, you know, we don't know if this will be supported or not financially as it moves forward, but we're very much in support of this, as Chancellor is, I know. So that is all I have for this one, and I think Dr. Reed is going to take the next workforce alignment initiative.
Kim, just one quick question. When you say financial aid, is that financial aid to go to a program, to hire people, to facilities, or is it aid that's going directly to the student?
To pay tuition.
Pay tuition. Okay. So
in the end.
So are the existing programs that the state has won't pay that tuition?
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Dr. Reed?
Good afternoon. I want to highlight the Mobilizing the Tennessee Nursing Workforce Initiative. This is a statewide approach to scaling up our pre-practical nursing, practical nursing, and the AAS and nursing programs across community colleges. Currently, we have 8 Tcats who are offering the pre-practical nursing pathway, and we want the additional 17 Tcats to be able to do that as well. We currently have 25 Tcats offering the practical nursing program, and all 13 community colleges are offering the AAS in nursing. This will allow all of them to scale up and allow additional cohorts to serve more students. You will look at the fiscal note for non-recurring is $9.9 million. That is for equipment for Tcats and community colleges. That is inclusive of equipment such as hospital beds, simulation mannequins, computer labs, software, and laboratory supplies. Also in recurring, we have faculty and staff costs of $8.9 million under that $10.1 million. And this is where the Tcats will be able to scale up additional faculty to offer additional cohorts in pre-practical nursing as well as practical nursing. And the community colleges have an allocation within that to add additional faculty to add more students to their program as well. As we look if this is funded at the level for faculty for both areas, we could serve an additional 2,280 more students annually across all of these programs. And I also want to highlight 1.2 million of that 10.1 is in marketing so that we can engage Tennesseans in these opportunities across the state. So again, this allows us to increase access, to add additional cohorts, and again to serve over 2,280 more students annually to really meet this workforce pipeline. Any questions?
Do we currently have a backlog for nursing? Is that a target area?
One of the reasons that we're asking for this marketing is a lot of people stopped going into nursing during the pandemic, so we do not have the pipeline that we have normally had. The demand is there. We have all of the professionals in the industry telling us they've got to have these individuals to continue to do what they're doing, but our enrollment in these areas has continued to go down.
And that's true in the four-year institutions as well.
Yeah.
Chancellor, can I ask on that? So what are we doing, though, for the pipeline for the faculty? Because it's great to have the money to hire them, but on the other end, if you're the one trying to seek them at the salary we're offering them, that's a dried up pipeline. And now that we know there's already a shortage in the hospitals and other healthcare facilities, their salaries are going up to maintain and keep them. And this is a problem that's been going on for years to attract great faculty into our institutions.
And we're definitely experiencing that at the college level as well right now. Many of the colleges have openings in this area. The money that you approved last year that the legislature put in for our salary study that we did to increase pay helped. And many of the presidents, are very grateful for that. And they said it did help retain some that we might have lost otherwise. But there is a deficit there. We are recruiting heavily. We've got some ways to look at those salaries to do what we need to do to try and get people into the area. We rely heavily on individuals that have been in the workforce setting that might want to step back from the pace of that workforce setting because it is so demanding and draining physically on individuals that they find teaching attractive. And so those are the ones that we've relied heavily on to come back into our arena.
Any other additional questions?
Perhaps when this is, hopefully if this gets approved, we can really have a detailed definition of mobilization to include, several of the things that we've talked about.
Sure, I'll be glad to provide that for you.
So tell me why you use the word mobilizing.
Because we need to move more faculty into the teaching ranks to meet these needs, but more importantly, we need to mobilize students to know that this is a high demand, high paying career choice, and that TBR is ready to train them to go into it. So we want it to be an action initiative that is about moving everybody forward to meet that workforce need. So that was the choice behind it.
Thank you.
The 2,280 number, how did you arrive at that, capacity-wise?
So when we looked at the Tcat's pre-practical nursing part of the funding is identifying 28 full-time faculty to meet the needs, which will serve 560 additional students in just that sector of the program. And again, that's based on 28 faculty teaching a 1.20 ratio of students. Under the Tcat pre-practical nursing, we're identifying 23 full-time faculty who are able to serve approximately 460 additional students based on that ratio. And then with the community colleges, that asks for 41 full-time faculty to serve approximately 820 additional students. So if we met that optimum number, that's where the 2,280 would come from.
So I think I'm asking the backwards of that question. Sure. In other words, to arrive at that faculty number, you had to, going back to what Mark said earlier, if there's a backlog or if you have some understanding of what goal you're trying to meet on those numbers.
So part of what we did was we did a survey with all the community colleges and the Tcats to say, what is your capacity? Where would you like to be? So based on the responses from each of those leaders in those areas, we set the funding for optimum capacity that they want to do, knowing we got to do some intentional work around recruitment of faculty.
And remember that we are somewhat place-bound for clinical placement in that we have to rely on the hospitals to open up those placement for us. So it's not an unlimited number that you can put in. You have to arrive at a formula that is manageable. You have to know what your hospital is going to allow you to increase up to. So that's where the figures came from. There was a great deal of pre-work that went into this. And we actually worked on this last year as a legislative priority. We got a little bit of traction in it last year, but we have been able to define and refine more what we are asking for in this year's priority.
So, quick question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead.
In this mobilization effort, and I know you guys do this so well in terms of developing partners, but is the healthcare community prepared to stand behind us on this and help advocate and help in this mobilization and marketing effort?
I would say absolutely. Actually, when we developed this proposal last year, we had healthcare partners meeting with us to really emphasize the need for this proposal to go forward to legislation. So they were actually a part of my conversations and my research in developing the proposal. So they're in desperate need. in the hospitals and facilities and other long-term care places where they need nurses. And so I think we have a great deal of support there.
No, it's okay. Good question. So if this money is, the situation we're looking at here is that we need more nurses to get into the workforce place. We're basically at even in terms of how much additional capacity we have. So we need $20 million roughly to be able to expand it 2,280 students. I mean, students or nurses. So is that primarily, here's my question. Do we have the plant capacity to handle all of those now? We're not talking about having to build out or take over classrooms or buy large amounts of equipment. Is that correct?
Sure. So in terms of facilities, the response from community colleges TCATs is that the number of faculty asked for will work within current facilities. But there may be a need for new or updated equipment, which is why you see for the equipment, depending on the program, is about $9.9 million of the total ask allocated for updated equipment. Also remember some of the Tcat pre-practical, some of those sites are held at an actual high school. So it could be a chance to provide that newer equipment in those spaces as well. But there was no request for facility expansion.
Thank you.
Is any of the equipment nursing simulators?
There are simulation of mannequins included, yes.
Yeah, good.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. At this point, I turn it back to Vice Chancellor Fox.
I'll play Alicia for a few minutes. So the next item is a conglomerate of items that trying to think through how we as a system respond to the last 3 years. This board is quite familiar, of course, with the enrollment declines we've had as a preview of what you'll see tomorrow. Those declines are continuing into this fall. And trying to come up with a holistic way to address the various challenges as we're seeing them. Some of these ideas that you heard about at committee chairs in more depth here now require thought with collaborators at Chiefs, THEC, et cetera. And some of these ideas also will resonate and echo from reports from other agencies and other research of the last few years, both by TBR and external folks too. And the two broad categories we're going to get into here, one is thinking about student recruitment and the retention and success incentives we think we need, and a second one into financial aid. Go ahead, this girl. And by the way, all of this has an accompanying narrative in your materials that's around page 185 or so, if I remember right, but it's got some meaty paragraphs to give you some background. But the four main topics on this first one, first is a student support network that has really two aspects to it. And this really tries to reflect both the emerging qualitative and quantitative information that TBR and really all of higher ed's experienced the last few years about the need for students and their mental health challenges and the need to support low-income students better than we currently have the capacity to do. So two aspects of this one. One would be taking a regional approach to locate at each community college, who would then serve its proximate TCATs, both a mental health counselor and a student services coordinator, those two professionals at each location. Currently we have, and Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong here, we have about 15 to 20 maybe mental health counselors across TBR. Best research shows we need 3 or 4 times that at least. And so this would move towards that more ideal ratio to serve the needs that we identify. That person would be coupled with a student services coordinator who would help connect low-income students with other resources available to them, whether it's housing assistance, TANF funds, emergency grants from foundations, anything that helps a low-income student meet his or her challenges and their family's challenges. This person would help that student connect to those to other agencies who can also offer those services. There is a dearth of these professionals on our campuses. They need more help. We think this would go a long way to helping address sort of the non-academic challenges that our students often face. The second on the list, the second of these four, is the collective is called Modernizing the Learning Experience. This has 3 components. The first one is one that you've seen in prior budget requests, which would be to establish and really breathe new life into a Center for Teaching and Learning. We have about 6,000 faculty across the sector, across the system. And as we've watched the pandemic unfold, even pre-pandemic, we've always had a significant portion of instruction occurring online, and that only increased during the pandemic. We thought there might be a return to normal in some ways, but we have still seen roughly a 50-50, at the macro level, mix between in-person and online. So there's still an acute need for training for our faculty to help prepare them to be able to teach in that environment. So this would establish resources that would be servicing all 6,000 faculty, supplementing what campuses already have investments in to help their faculty, but to help them meet that online learning challenge in ways that we think meet the moment and meet the modern way the student learns. The second two components, this is under the Student Success Technologies bullet, would be two elements. One would be a system-wide approach to a CRM, a Customer Relations Manager. More sort of a generic term, but in higher ed space, it really helps to connect the various communication avenues for both recruitment and retention for students, bringing those threads together and allowing the campus to more effectively and instantly communicate with students about their needs, about resources, and help manage both the recruitment and retention process. There are some nascent efforts underway at certain campuses. This would allow us to take a system-wide approach to meet that challenge. It's a key, I would say, mechanical element to the strategic enrollment management work being led by Dr. Lemming. This is a key technological innovation that we think we need at a system level. Second part of that would be another acronym, CLR, a Comprehensive Learner Record. And again, as we discussed a few weeks ago, that is an emerging technology in higher ed space again that tries to rethink how we communicate what a student knows, what her competencies are to a potential employer. The transcript did that historically. You tried to then interpret what a grade in a certain course, what that label meant. That's kind of antiquated. Now the CLR attempts to say to an employer, here's what this student knows. Here are her competencies. Here are the different things she did extracurricular that might help with leadership communications. Anything that would sort of bring to life what a student knows and connecting them with the employer's needs in a way that is both dynamic, secure, and is transportable with the student throughout his or her career throughout the higher ed life cycle, not necessarily requiring you to then call your old alma mater and pay $3 for 10 new transcripts. You have a CLR record with you that travels with you as you go. Let me pause since I'm halfway through. Questions about those first several elements before we get into the next two major buckets? Regent Gill.
So the Student Success Technology, that is two components, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But that's all technology, correct?
Yes, that would basically be the software, essentially.
Yeah,
yes.
software,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, more
and
or
the
less.
second one is an analysis that tells the prospective employer really what they know. Is that correct?
Essentially, it would basically be a record of your academic and extracurricular experiences that can communicate qualifications to an employer.
To
Thinking
include
back to
their
my
work,
accounting.
it would include their warranty that we put on our
That's true.
students as well would be on that record.
Thinking back to my accounting degree, I would still be looking for a job if that'd been around here.
Dr. Deaton.
Yes, ma'am.
So back to what we talked about with President Hall, some of the challenges are that the students aren't even coming to the campus. So if we have a counselor, health or mental health counselor or social service counselor, and they're on campus, it's great that they're there for the folks that are coming in the door, but how do we reach those that are challenged otherwise?
That's a good question. I would imagine, and again, I'll maybe look to Heidi behind me to kind of either refute or deny, or refute or supplement this, but they would physically be based at a campus, but obviously their outreach would be both virtual when needed, scheduling appointments that way when needed, not simply requiring people to always come to the campus. It would be in a hybrid setting, I would say.
So I'm just going to dig one
Please.
step
Yeah.
deeper and then I'll let it go.
That's okay.
Kind of like at church, if folks are out sick or something
Right.
and you're sending out deacons or whoever to go visit them, in that same way I think about it, unless you are looking at it as here are the people that haven't been showing up or there's an absentee list that's increased and so we're going to reach out to them versus, so I'm trying to understand if the purpose here is to serve those who are asking for help, or are we also making sure, hey, you haven't shown up for half the semester, what's going on?
Well, and the mental health counselor would be, specific to that need. So not showing up to classes may trigger an advising or some other response by another part of the campus apparatus. And it may be connected to some sort of mental health need, which would then hopefully connect them with a trained counselor. So I would say an absence could potentially be that, if that were the cause, but that would probably then trigger another person first engaging to find out why that student might have been absent, playing the deacon role, so to speak, as you said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Russ, just to follow up on what you were sharing earlier, we talked about this a few weeks ago as well. I just feel like there's just a big gap on why kids are not going, and we alluded to that earlier today, and perhaps that can be more detailed in the description of what that, the additional, student success employees will do. So, and I got this idea from speaking to a previous president. If we're spending 10 or 15 minutes with someone versus spending 30 minutes with someone recurring, it may give us an insight on why their friends aren't coming to school.
That's true.
And it may give us an insight on what the barriers are. So if we've got funding available to be able to put people in place, let's get to the real root of why the funding is not there. And every school is going to be a different environment. It's going to be a different demographics. So perhaps the presidents can give some ideas on how to really get down to the nitty gritty and saying, okay, these are the common barriers that are preventing students from coming from high school straight to secondary education, and let's help plug that gap.
I agree. Two observations. One, obviously being personnel intensive, requiring people to do that listening to make those connections. And also, and I'm going to reflect back on a lunch conversation just today with Wendy Thompson, specific to black men, asking them that question and asking them, well, your friends who didn't make it this far, why not? What can we be doing there? So lots of threads, I think, to weave together here.
Yeah. I love that we've got the broadness that's here.
Right.
But gosh, I think there's an ability, as you mentioned, to dig a lot further to really make an impact.
Definitely. Agree.
Dr. Deaton.
Yes, ma'am.
This is not a question, it's more of a comment. Moving to the other part of the modernization, the Center for Innovation of Teaching and Learning, that is tremendously important. And as Dr. Hall was talking about with their Center for Teaching and Learning, I know Matt Lexau, the amazing things that he's done there, but we as faculty members are subject matter experts. I can teach history. Well, I know history like nobody's business, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I didn't go to school to be a teacher. So we need those skills. So I think that is going to be something that's going to be amazing for our teachers. And the pandemic taught us that being in the classroom with students is a tremendously different experience than being in the online classroom with students. So that's twofold where we need help. So thank you for that part of it.
Yeah, I concur. Yeah, this would have a pretty large ROI, I think. Moving on to the next two. So the third one here is the title, Telling the Higher Education Story. This will speak to the dire need we think we have for additional marketing resources within the system, both personnel at the system office to think about the needs of our colleges, but also money to actually do campaigns. And I was telling someone earlier, I saw the Tennessee Tech commercial during the Monday Night Football Titans game and marveled at what Dr. Oldham did. I'm not saying that's what this would go for, but just getting our name out there more beyond our capacity now, this would help us address some of the enrollment challenges we think we have, just being more assertive in the marketing space and giving Matthew Gann team way more resources for them to work their magic. And then finally, an expansion for dual enrollments. As this board has seen, and you'll see again tomorrow as a preview, dual enrollment's a growth area in our system, and we are seeing rapid growth, particularly at the Tcats, but really across all of our colleges. Managing those relationships, getting things set up, managing all the different moving parts is intensive, and many campuses don't have anyone dedicated to managing the myriad relationships the college has with their K-12 partners. As this is a growth area, and it's not abating anytime soon, given the episode demands on K-12, we think this would go a long way towards helping our colleges both increase and strengthen the partnerships they have in the K-12 setting for dual enrollment.
It seems to me that there are probably discrepancies across the system now in terms of how we've staffed up dual
Yes.
enrollment.
That's true. Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed, at least, moving around my part of the state, of course, I live in Hamilton County, is a lot of our rural counties do a lot better job, particularly in Tcat dual enrollment, than they do in community. Well, the small counties do a better job than big counties do, and it's a kind of confusing reality when you think about, for example, we run 76 public schools in one consolidated system. We ought to be able to customize things pretty well. And Dr. Barrett runs an incredible Tcat, but it's been a breakdown. And so my hope would just be that that 3.2 million would be targeted to where those breakdowns exist. I often use the comparison of Roane County. Now, Roane County is a unicorn because it's got a Tcat and it's also got a community college. Right. But basically, every high school there, you've got ample community college and Tcat dual enrollment opportunities, whereas in the suburbs and in the inner city of Chattanooga alike, you likely don't have much of a dual enrollment opportunity. And, when I've talked to Dr. Barrett about this, a lot of it, I think, does become a coordination issue, which is a manpower issue.
Right, exactly right. Yeah. That central point about the variation across the sector, that is definitely true. Mm-hmm. If there are no other questions on this first broad category, the next slide has that second category, just one item, and this is about financial aid. And the distinction here too, back to Regent Gill, your question when Dr. McCormick was talking about the education and workforce financial aid, that was in the non-credit space, of course, where state financial aid does not fund, and so there's really no resources there. This would be building off of existing state financial aid resources that are on the credit side of the house, particularly with Tennessee Promise. And one of the features we've seen, and this has been written about by other agencies too, is that Promise, of course, covers last dollar tuition and fees, direct costs. It does not get into other costs faced by students, whether it be books or materials and supplies. The idea here is to have a $500 per person award for up to 20,000 Pell eligible students, low-income students, to go towards those costs. And to a question, I think, from either Regent Powers or Green and committee chairs, that $500 is our attempt to make some progress towards those needs, but with being still sort of fiscally minded about what that would require of the state. So this would be an experiment to try to eat into some of that need for low-income students within the Promise and Reconnect programs. Yes, sir.
So how is that to be administered within the facilities themselves? I mean, do the Tcats, for example, do they have the staff there that they can do the applications, and does this go then to the state for disbursement, or does it come to us, or how does that work? You've got a very small sum of money in terms of business purposes, or for business, if you look at it from a business standpoint, and yet you've got 20,000 potential people. That's a massive check, make sure that they qualify, check and make sure that this I's dotted, T's crossed. So how does that work?
It would probably definitely need to utilize the state's financial aid infrastructure, TSAC, that administers Promise, Reconnect, Hope. It would also have to utilize, of course, campus personnel. On the Tcat side, much of that is now centralized through shared services, so you'd have a lot of that. Jonathan Button, if you're smiling somewhere, this is going to be in your wheelhouse, would be done here. We would assist quite a bit, but it would sort of follow existing channels. It is new with a lot of people, but there's an infrastructure already in place through TSAC and through shared services that would make this quite doable, we think. Any other questions about these two categories? I think that's my last slide, right, Carol? Yeah. I think now I will turn it over to Alicia Fox, right? Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Russ. So the final initiative that I am presenting today is the Safety and Security Initiative. This has a $6 million tag to that, a $1 million recurring and $5 million non-recurring. And this proposal is to establish an emergency communication center for our newly formed Tbr Police Department. So essentially this would be as it's described, a communication center. So our Tcat police officers could call into the center if there's an emergency. We could relay the communications, emergency communications and things like that. If you're familiar with emergency communication centers in cities and towns, it would be similar to that. So this is the non-recurring portion is for some equipment. The recurring portion would be for personnel to staff that emergency communication center. The additional request is for continuing the work for campus safety and security for our Tcats and community colleges. If you'll recall, in FY 18-19 through 2021, we did receive some funding for our Tcats and community colleges to make safety and security upgrades, which was wonderful. We sincerely appreciate that, but we still have needs on our campuses. So we surveyed our campuses to ask them about their current needs to come up with this dollar amount that we have here today. Unfortunately, we're being conservative, and this doesn't cover everything, but it covers the bulk of the top priorities. So this is the bulk of the non-recurring dollars here. The $4 million in non-recurring would be for equipment for our Tcats and community colleges. So some examples of equipment would be obviously cameras, increased lighting in parking lots, in areas outdoors, signage, electronic access to exterior doors to be able to lock down in certain situations, and things like that. So that is the bulk of what I'm presenting today is our safety and security initiatives, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about those. Yeah, well, that was easy. Thank you. So this does conclude the content portion of our initiatives today. We took questions along the way, but obviously we'll be happy to answer any other questions that you might have at this time. If not, I'll turn it over to Chairperson Green.
Any other questions? This conversation, it just warms my heart that we've had such a passionate and purposeful conversation. I mean, we've spoken about financial aid, kind of the gap funding for our students, healthcare with nursing to put them in the right position to continue to take care of our community, success challenges, safety and security. Our kids aren't going to go to a school that they don't feel safe, and ultimately the ability to kind of get our word out. So thank you, committee members. Thank you, regents, for having this passion. And hopefully our legislators will listen to us, because I think we've got great plans to really execute these fundings.
Maybe it was just a function of having a new chair to the Finance Committee.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But this is all a really great work. So thank you, Alicia, for leading this.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we will call for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Nisha. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Wes. All right. Do we have any other discussion points? If not, this requires a voice vote. Or, yes. Just a roll call vote. Okay.
Regent George,
Aye.
Regent Gill,
Aye.
Regent Green,
Aye.
Regent Womp.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The second agenda item is the presentation of our proposed revisions to Tbr Policy 7.01.0, Firearms and Other Weapons. I will ask that General Counsel Brian Lapp summarize the recommended revisions.
Thank you, Chair Green, Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, and members of the board. The proposed revisions to the firearms policy really fall into two categories, or two purposes. Purpose one is to provide law enforcement officers discretion to use good judgment in whether to arrest somebody who violates our firearms policy, which tracks the law. Currently, policy says essentially that they should effectuate an arrest, or if there's no law enforcement on campus, that the president shall call law enforcement. By having better judgment, giving discretion whether to effectuate an arrest, like police officers have for almost everything else, we think it can provide common sense as well as safety. And then the second portion of the second purpose of the revisions is to clarify who may transport a firearm in their locked car or in their car secured on campus. It just better tracks the law in terms of when people may carry a firearm onto campus in their trunk. So if there are no further questions, or I guess I should wait until there's a motion, before I entertain any questions, but.
No, if not, then we will call for a motion to approve.
I so move.
Thank you, Mark. And we have to have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. All right, and this also requires a voice call vote, a roll call vote. Voice call, okay. I'm trying to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. The third item on the agenda is a safety and security update. And I will ask that Assistant Vice Chancellor for Campus Safety and Security, Tcat Chief of Police, Michael Williams, present a summary of the progress. Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon. Chair, Vice Chair Reynolds, Regent Green, members of the Business and Finance Committee, Chancellor Tidings, and of course, Vice Chancellor Fox. Board members and distinguished guests here, as well as those joining virtually today, I will provide our brief history that has brought us to the point to provide an update of Department of Campus Safety and Security since our last report in June. As you know, the Tbr Police Department began development only a few months ago to provide the police officers for the Tcats. Through this year's state-approved act carried by Senator Bo Watson and Representative Patsy Hazelwood, the legislature passed $2.3 million in recurring and $1.2 million in non-recurring funds. Campus safety security will eventually encompass all of TBR colleges, and the TBR community college chiefs currently meet virtually each month to collaborate on best practices. Ongoing trainings by the TCLEA, the State Department of Safety and Homeland Security, THEC, also engage the unity of these officers and maintain annual training compliances. As stated at the previous quarterly board meeting, the vision of the agency includes providing top-notch annual training to specialized law enforcement at our community college partners, in addition to forthcoming TBR police officers. A strong emergency management capability will be developed within the TBR Police Department, and support will be provided to sister agencies should the need arise. We've already partnered with the Tennessee Highway Patrol to aid upon requests for local agencies in times of greater emergency need. I visited each Tcat's main campus and met with almost every president this summer, and there were all good conversations about priority of providing a safe and secure environment for all the students, faculty, staff, and visitors. We discussed future best practices related to the areas in that responsibility. For fiscal year 22-23, we have begun the formation of the TBR Police Department, I am proud to report. To have an officer at each Tcat, certain processes must be in place, such acquisition of equipment and software. We are nearing completion of this process of ordering through RFQs, RFPs, and equipped campus safety and security presence at the TBR institutions. Next slide. As you can see on the flow chart, everything is now starting to come together and tie itself together very nicely. We have launched a hiring practice for our Eastern and Western captains, and those should close out at the beginning of October, and we're hoping to have officers on the ground at a Tcat mid-November. So we're very proud of that fact. After this, sometime next week, you should see police officer applications coming in for officers at all the Tcat locations. And we are very happy of that is happening. In the meantime, we'll continue to develop and implement policies and procedures, which will be an ongoing process for the lifetime of this department. As you can see, our organization's chart is in place and ready to fill out. We are excited. If you'll turn to slide 3, please. While this is just a PowerPoint, this means so much more to us because we've worked so hard to get to this point, so we're excited about it. All of that saying, we're still continuing the recruiting process for officers at TBR campuses and all the people that occupy them daily. With your support, our department continues to build a strong team structured with dedicated, trained, and equipped professionals ready for an emergency. Regent Green, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief Williams. One question I do have, I know that I'm pretty close to another chief that's in Nashville. And so I know that there's been lots of work, especially with Dr. Jackson and Nashville State, and just curious on how you're thinking about recruiting and kind of how you're going to roll this out from a recruiting perspective.
Well, it's actually, the recruiting process is actually taking care of itself. I'm getting phone calls daily because TCATs are located in a lot of rural areas. And so we're finding out as we speak to the presidents, hey, spread the word for us, let us know. And that's what they're doing. They're spreading the word for us, and we're already receiving phone calls. When can I apply? When can I apply? And I'll tell you, I've probably spoken, I'm not exaggerating this, to probably 40 officers across this state looking to either retire but continue to work or to make a career change.
Awesome. That's great.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Chief Williams? All right. Well, this was for an informational item, so no actions required on behalf of the committee. This completes our agenda for today. Do we have any other business to come before the Finance Committee? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Regent Green. Well done. Thank you so much. We have a robust and interesting agenda on workforce development this afternoon. Regent Burdine?
Yes, we do. Looking forward to it. Thank you for everyone for being here this afternoon. I'm calling the informational meeting of the Workforce Development Committee to order. And Secretary Perry, if you'll call the roll, please.
Chair Burdine.
Here.
Regent George.
Here.
Regent Lee.
Here.
Regent Long.
Here.
Regent Powers.
Here.
And Regent Varlin. Mr. Chair, your committee is assembled and you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. We've got a lot of updates today, and unfortunately, Carol Puryear is unable to be with us today, so Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Jonathan Reed, is back on target here.
Good afternoon. It's been a while since I've seen you all. I'm very excited about the workforce update and just the tremendous work that TBR is doing across this state. Again, the first three highlights on behalf of Dr. Carol Puryear, who's done an amazing job in this role. Next slide, please. So this is the order of the presentations coming out of the Center for Workforce and Development. Next slide, please. The first highlight is on TBR campus's workforce training initiatives. First, we want to highlight Workforce Solutions at Jackson State Community College piloted a series of fiber optic boot camps with the help of a USDA grant. Through that 5-day boot camp, participants received 3 nationally recognized certifications sanctioned by the Fiber Optic Association. The first class was primarily supported by West Tennessee utility companies, hoping to upskill their technicians in fiber optics. That reach is now expanded to include participants from other states, including Arkansas, Mississippi, Georgia, and Virginia. Also, Tcat Morristown and Colgate have been meeting since February to develop a partnership. Collaboratively, they have developed an internship program where temporary employees come to Tcat Morristown and take classes in industrial maintenance as well as industrial electricity. The students then go to Colgate and work under a seasoned technician. They started with 5 interns this summer, and the company has requested 5 more to start in October. Also, we want to highlight Career Quest. They draw thousands of students to STEM career events each year. Faculty and staff from the Regional Center for Advanced Manufacturing and the Technologies Division represented Northeast State last week at Career Quest at the East Tennessee State University campus. The 2-day event brought more than 4,000 middle and high school students together with employers and colleges. Students could learn about career opportunities in manufacturing, information technology, construction, and healthcare. And we also want to highlight that Tcat Murfreesboro has received the CT Coach, complete with virtual reality for welding, collision repair, and Festo mechanics trainers, along with other toys to increase early adoption of technical careers. There will be several industry announcements coming soon in which the campuses have played a key role in recruiting, so look forward to that soon. Next slide, please. The Center for Workforce Development has also been very busy. We want to highlight they have just done a big workshop called Bring Your A Game. That's what we do every day in academic affairs, but they needed a workshop. But it focuses on worker ethics, soft skills, and really engage employers with not just the technical skills, but those A-game skills. So with this Bring Your Game workshop,
that was hosted by Josh, who is the CEO of the Center for Work Ethic Development, an organization committed to developing workplace skills in the global workforce. They are partnered with organizations in 50 states as well as 6 countries, and they have provided that training here at Tcat Murfreesboro. They had over 30 participants participate in this workshop from all of our colleges and to achieve the goals, and each participant was able to receive a work ethic trainer certificate. Next slide, please. This is just a highlight to show you just how interactive and informative this workshop was. And again, participants left with ideas about how to incorporate A-game into their workforce offerings as well as their curriculum. Next slide. We also want to highlight Workforce Development Month. That was created in 2005 by the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals to raise awareness about the importance of industry in a growing national economy. The U.S. Senate passed a resolution naming September Workforce Development Month, acknowledging the importance of workforce development. To recognize this, the Center for Workforce Development hosted a Know Your Workforce Partners on September 14th with over 60 participants engaged in this workshop. And again, the focus was participants learned about local as well as state resources available and how to better engage their communities. The next workshop will be next Wednesday, and they will share the workforce training best practices, which will include reviewing the first steps of working with companies for workforce training, discussing PLA, selling the system, and sharing success stories. Next slide, please. Let me pause there for any questions on the general highlights from the Center for Workforce Development. Regent Bernard, would you like me to continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I want to give a quick highlight around the THEC Workforce Training Contact Hours reporting for 2021-2022. THEC collects annual workforce training, enrollment, and contact hours data from the Tbr community colleges as part of its higher education funding formula calculations. This is still draft numbers. We know that the results will be reviewed by THEC this month, and when we have our December meeting, you will get those finalized and verified numbers as well. You can see here on your screen the numbers that have been documented as of today, but unverified for workforce training contact hours, as well as head count for workforce training. Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Let's hear from Blue Oval.
All right, so I gave the appetizers. Here is the course, because we are all very excited about the work happening in Blue Oval City. So let me give some quick highlights, and then it's going to be my pleasure to bring on Dr. Jeff Sisk and Heath McMillan, who are truly the tip of the spear on the work we're doing around curriculum and development and our asset map with Ford. But what we do want to highlight on the next slide, please, are the job fairs surrounding this work. We are working with building Tcat facility and developing curriculum. And again, we're also involved in assisting in workforce recruitment with the construction of the Blue Oval City plant. To assist the contractor, Wallbridge, Ripley, Covington, Tcat Jackson, and Jackson State hosted a job fair for our students and the community. The construction companies are looking for all types of skills, but the real focus is on welding, HVAC, electrical, equipment operators, carpentry, brick, and block masonry. Next slide, please. At this time, I would like Dr. Jeff Sisk and Heath McMillan to give us updates on the actual curriculum and asset map around Ford.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, Committee Chair Burdine. This is going to be my first of many quarterly apologies for hiring Heath McMillan away from Northeast Tennessee. So
I've heard him call a lot of things tip of the
spear is not it, right? But thank you very much. I want to talk a little bit about the Advanced Manufacturing Production Tech training program that we're working with Ford. We're looking at repackaging what we're going to call it. I like the Electric Vehicle Production Technician Program. This is something that we're scaling up, all centered on the Certified Production Technician Program from the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council. We're going to write it non-OEM specific. So Volkswagen in East Tennessee, GM or Nissan in Middle, Ford in West can kind of tailor it how they want. We've done a lot of work with Ford on the West Tennessee side, obviously, a lot of lean manufacturing and some Ford specific things that they're looking for. And so Ford has signed off on that. We'll be submitting that as a program approval. The best thing about that, or one of the good things about that, is we can start this as dual enrollment beginning with ninth graders in area high schools. And so those school superintendents are really excited about that. Heath has been to Dearborn a couple of times now, including with a lot of the West Tennessee school superintendents, and some in-depth conversations on that. And to Regent Wamp's comment about dual enrollment opportunities in rural communities, you're absolutely correct. I just did a rough head count among my West Tennessee Tcat presidents, and I think we've got about 4,200 dual enrollment students in West Tennessee with those Tcats right now. 75% of those are manufacturing related students. We're excited about that. Heath is going to talk just a few minutes about the apprenticeship work he's been doing with Ford. The advantage that we've got is Ford's North American Training and Development Manager is a man named Andy Bianco, and a lot of you probably met Andy. We gave him office space at our Brownsville Extension campus right there with Heath, and so they are literally working together every day. And so Heath, if you want to talk about the apprenticeships.
Thank you, Regent Burdine and Chancellor Tidings, Vice Chancellor Reynolds. So thank you, Dr. Sisk. This was a little unexpected, but I am going to talk just a minute about the apprenticeships. And I think we talked about this the last board meeting, but we are looking at three different occupations: industrial electrician, industrial maintenance, and also tool and die. Ford has done an extensive amount of research on occupations. As many of you may know, Ford has been in the apprenticeship business since 1941. So they're very experienced at that, but they're also very concerned about improving those apprenticeship programs. So they've done a lot of in-depth studies on how we can do that, what we're offering in our K-12 programs in order to offer pre-apprenticeship programs as well. So one of the things that Ford has done is they have looked at every credential that's offered in our K-12 system to see how that's related to their onboarding. That's complete. They've also reviewed every Tcat program in West Tennessee to see how that relates to their occupations as well. And then, again, as we're looking at these occupations specifically for the apprenticeship, one of the things that we're looking at right now is, do we use a time-based approach, a hybrid approach, or a competency approach? And the competency and hybrid-based approaches, a lot of times that brings about a quicker program, ensuring that you get a first-class technician on the floor quicker. So Ford has typically leaned into time-based, but as many of you know, with the competency-based, that does allow to bring a technician forward quicker. So with that, I mean, the other thing that we're working on as well is the onboarding process and what that looks like, and getting a timeline. Ford hasn't yet shared numbers on their workforce with us. They haven't shared the number of those occupations that they'll be hiring, but I think they're very close to doing that, and I think you'll even start to see hiring within the next 18 months.
Thank you. Any questions for Heath? I've got one for Dr. Sisk. Did I hear you right, 4,200 dual enrollment students?
Yes, sir. Our final numbers aren't in yet, but we're looking at, in West Tennessee, Tcats, about 4,200 dual enrollment students this term.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'd be happy to sit down and kind of share some of those strategies.
That's how many Tcats?
Well, we're merging. Started with 9. We've got 8 officially, so 8 official Tcats. Yeah, with multiple campuses across. So the key here is we push those programs down to the high school level rather than have those kids come to us.
Are there any school systems that are nailing it? I mean, obviously some of this is on our side. Some of this is a cooperative K-12 partner.
Yeah, several. Gibson County Schools, Hardeman County Schools, Fayette County Schools, all who happen to be surrounding Blue Oval City because they get it.
So do you have a historical comparison of that $4,200 students? How does that, is that double? Is that up 10%? Is it level? What's it?
5 times at Tcat Jackson. Yeah, 8 years ago, we may have had a dozen dual enrollment students, and those are the kids who can make it out to our campus, which is nowhere near any of our partner high schools.
So these are being pushed down to the K-12 facilities, is that right?
These are yes, sir. It is full-time Tcat faculty members who we're stationing at the high schools.
But it's their equipment, our equipment, how does that?
It's both. It could be grants that we've gotten from TBR. Sometimes we'll inherit some high school equipment, but the key is it's a full-time Tcat faculty member who's teaching the Tcat curriculum to the kids at their high school. It eliminates the transportation issue to get those kids to our campus. We'll just send one faculty member there rather than 25 kids at a time to the Tcat campus.
That's exciting to me.
Yeah, and this is a model that's replicating across the state. So I think when Dr. Deaton probably shares the increases in dual enrollment numbers, particularly in the Tcat sector, that's going to be the prime strategy that we're all employing. Word travels fast. One thing about Blue Oval City, Ford had identified 1,300 individual, they call it KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities that it takes to run that Blue Oval City campus. So then we did a gap analysis of what we're doing in the Tcat sector, the community college sector, high school CTE, and even to the university sector about what we're missing, what we're not currently teaching. And so we're incorporating these changes, upgrades, additions to our curricula that we have in our inventory to ensure that we're meeting those needs. And then, you had a question, Regina? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, so are we seeing more continuity then between the K-12 program and a Tcat? Does it look more like the offerings of instruction and all that kind of stuff in the K-12 programs or in the as it is as the Tcat?
So that's part of the growth in our dual enrollment numbers is that these school superintendents and building principals see that if you're teaching the Tcat program at the high school, there is no misalignment. It is the Tcat curriculum. So there's your alignment. But yeah, we are doing a lot of work with CTE programs that aren't necessarily dual enrollment programs on the alignment side, but it's all industry driven, particularly in rural West Tennessee by Ford specifically, and some of the sporting occupations.
Hey, Jeff, quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I know it's early yet, but are we starting to see any signs of folks moving into the area knowing Ford is coming, and then obviously that has an effect, on school enrollments as well? Any early signs there?
So Regent Burdine and I have a common friend, Kyle Spurgeon. I'm sure Regent Burdine has those conversations with Kyle. Kyle's the president and CEO of the Jackson Area Chamber of Commerce. And I keep up with the city news and all of the new city council approvals of planning, planned developments and things like that. So we are starting to see that influx. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. You go ahead. So, of these 4,200 participants, is there any formal tracking? Are we able to look and say they've got this many of them got credentials, this many of them went to work here, this many of them went on to a four-year college, or so on and so forth? Can we look at that body and start to learn? Because my guess is these are the kids of the 30% or plus that graduate from high school in Tennessee and we never hear from them again. Hopefully those 4,200 kids are part of that.
So they're actually registered in our Banner student system as students. We track them that way. And it's actually a part of our, at least at Tcat Jackson, part of our strategic enrollment management plan to increase the matriculation rate, the yield rate, for lack of a better term, which will sit 15 to 18% of kids who take dual enrollment classes will then matriculate on immediately after high school graduation. But the reality is, the average age of a student at Tcat Jackson is about 27 years old. So we're looking to capture more of those kids right out of high school. In the Tcat sector, and I think most Tcat presidents would agree, our growth areas are dual enrollment and apprenticeships. Those are our two prime areas for growth. And just looking at some just preliminary enrollment numbers, we might be up 3% full-time headcount at Tcat Jackson as opposed to last fall, but we're up huge, our dual enrollment numbers. That's part of that growth strategy that we're looking at. Next slide, please.
I think John's got a question.
I'm sorry. Hey, John. Yes.
First, thank you very much for setting the bar high, because my boss is in the audience over here and he's going to be on me when I get back. But, dual enrollment is huge across the state. It's a huge initiative across the state right now. I know the big issue that we're seeing, as instructors trying to get everything out is, the lack of faculty to be able to support those programs out there. So one thing that we've implemented in our area is bringing in high school instructors to help train and do that, training those high school instructors. Have you all had any luck with that yet, or have you tried that at all yet?
You look like you wanted to address that. Okay. Yeah, so we'll bring them in the summers and have those familiarization camps, bring them in, show them what we're using. So we have two types of dual enrollment faculty at our high schools. Our full-time faculty, who we're sending down there at the high school all day. And we also have adjunct faculty who are also CT instructors at the high schools, and they have to come to us in the summers to get trained up on that particular Tcat curriculum.
And I find that that's bringing the high school programs really up to another level as well. I don't know what you all have seen, but just from the work that we started this summer with it, we saw a massive growth in high school programs as far as the ability of the instructor, because they don't receive the type of training that we receive at Tcats.
Right.
So our opportunity to pass that knowledge down, I think, is a great model and an opportunity to expand dual enrollment on higher levels than we ever have in the past.
And then a frequent conversation we have with those faculty members is, how can we do this full-time at my high school? That leads to other conversations with the school superintendent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I had a question. Is all the dual enrollment in the high schools, or is any of it in the Tcats? Is it 100% at the high school, in the high schools?
No, sir. Depending on the individual school, I know Tcat Livingston and Tcat in Paris literally have high schools across the street from them, and they'll have a really high percentage of their dual enrollment students coming across the street there. But some of us, like Tcat Jackson's main campus, isn't close to any of our partner high schools, and none of our other extension campuses or instructional service centers, we're not really co-located with a high school. So it's going to vary depending on where you are.
That's just amazing. 15 to 4,200 is just amazing.
I hire great people, and I give them the tools they need to do their job and let them do it.
How many dual enrollment students do you have at Tcat Jackson?
A little over 2,000 this semester.
How many of those are in Madison County versus what does your service area look like population wise?
I'll pull those specific stats for you, and I'll send those via the committee.
They may not care, but I'd be particularly interested.
But to your point, it is more of our rural counties who are embracing it more than Jackson-Madison County school system, but it's better.
Okay.
Maybe 10% total is Jackson-Madison County students. It's an active conversation. I enjoy it, though.
Very good conversation.
Next slide, please. And the final thing we want to talk about, Blue Oval City, kind of the strategy for Blue Oval City. Our campus that we're building won't be through until the spring of '24. Summer of '24 is when the plant itself, the Ford, I say Ford, we have to remember this is a joint venture between Ford and SK Innovation. So it's BOSK, Blue Oval SK, joint partnership there. Their plant should be done summer, fall of '24, but they need to start onboarding, upskilling employees even prior to either of those facilities being completed. So we have an early skills training strategy that we've developed, identified both community and TBR assets where we can start bringing in people before the facilities are completed to train. So there's an inventory of those assets that we have. And I've got a meeting next week with UT Martin about using some of their space down in Fayette County to add to this as well. So we can start doing some early skills training for Blue Oval City even prior to our campus being complete or the Ford facility being complete.
Very good. Any more questions? I've got one. Do you all anticipate high school students being allowed to work inside Ford?
So what?
And get paid for it?
That's I haven't asked that specific question. Heath may have a little more insight into that.
Okay.
There may be a Department of Labor question. I think industries have a misperception of what younger people are allowed to do and what they aren't to do. Jackson-Madison County has they call it the LOOP program, Local Options and Opportunities Program, where high school kids are actually taking those required courses that they have for graduation at the participating manufacturer, and then they're doing the other half day in a work-based learning environment. So, yeah, you can work in manufacturing, whether Ford allows that or not. I haven't asked that specific question. Well, come on up.
So I had one more question about SK Innovation. That's the first I've heard of SK Innovation. Is that the battery part of?
That's a South Korean battery manufacturer, yes. They currently have a plant in Commerce, Georgia as well, but it's not a joint venture. So you'll see a Ford assembly plant and a BOSK battery plant. So that's how that's going to operate. But I have asked the question about high school involvement on the plant floor, and also justice involved as well. Ford has typically not leaned into those resources, but what I will say is they're open to looking at that. They have leaned into justice involved in the Chicago area with some challenges, but they are definitely open to that in Tennessee. So.
Well, as you know, Heath, Eastman's finally doing it.
Yes.
And they've been very successful at it. In fact, they just got their second class. Did their signing day thing last week.
Yes, so. Yes, it was great work by you and your team as well.
We've also got a trip scheduled for the end of October down to the SK plant in Georgia with Clay Bright that he's put together for us to go and look at what they're actually doing with the training there.
Yeah, and SK will have a section in the Tcat as well for training.
You need to pick me up in Chattanooga on your way down to Georgia, all right?
Those students, by the way, at Eastman are getting paid $15 an hour. So they go to school in the morning and then they go to work at Eastman in the afternoon. Sometimes it's the other way around, but.
I thought you had a new job. What do you want to run off to Georgia for?
We're just learning stuff here, Mark. Come on, man.
And I think one of the most important things to note about the Eastman partnership is they've actually hired some of those students full-time after they've graduated. That's the key.
One of them's my next door neighbor.
Yes.
Changed his life, so.
It has.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Let me say this. One thing about Heath McMillan that everybody knows, Heath has actually gone through a couple of different apprenticeship programs while employed at Eastman Chemical. Right. He's actually a journeyman welder and millwright. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to grad school, so that's a great combination. So credible skill set, does yeoman's work every day. Ford loves him, and this is going to be a success. We're working hard every day. Thank you, sir.
Keep bragging on your stealing of him. That's what you appreciate that. So, Vice Chancellor Reed's back up.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank Dr. Sisk and Heath for all of their great work around Blue Oval City. And that concludes all of the presentations on behalf of Dr. Puryear.
So next up, law enforcement. Is that right?
Yes, law enforcement. And while I'm introducing that through academic affairs, Matthew is going to share with you all a booklet around this TBR Metro Nashville Police Department that we use for an amazing press event. But just to provide some background, the Law Enforcement Collaborative really is a response to the collective vision of Chancellor Tidings, as well as Chief John Drake of the Metro Nashville Police Department, where they challenged us to think about innovative strategies for recruitment into law enforcement. The collaborative thought partnership of leaders from TBR, Nashville State Community College, Metro Nashville Police Department, and Metro Nashville Public Schools answered that charge with the development of this model that I'm excited to share with you. The focus of the Law Enforcement Collaborative is to have positive points of engagement and career exploration from childhood through a career in law enforcement. Next slide, please. I would like for you all to see a press event. Here's a highlight from the local news that will show what was shared
initiative that's expected to increase student interest in law enforcement as early as elementary school was announced today in Nashville. WSMV's Justina Latimer has the details.
Well, this new partnership will create a pathway for young students to gain a career path and also help the need for more professionals within law enforcement.
Nashville State is just simply excited to be a part of this expanded collaboration.
Today, the Tennessee Board of Regents, Metro Police, MNPS, Nashville State Community College, and more announced the launch of a new partnership.
While we welcome those that want to embrace law enforcement and transition their career in Nashville, we at the same time need to demonstrate to students beginning in the elementary years and continuing through the 12th grade that it's cool and rewarding to pursue a career in public service in their hometown.
The initiative will include opportunities for students to explore both civilian and commissioned officer roles at MMPD and pursue the education they'll need.
There have been very difficult conversations in recent years about policing, particularly as it impacts the Black and brown community. And as a district with a majority Black and brown student body, that concerns me, which is why I think that it is important for MMPS and MMPD to do work together.
For instance, high school students may enroll in dual enrollment courses that will allow them to earn college credits in programs like criminal justice. The student can then continue their education and earn an associate's degree at Nashville State Community College.
I believe this is only the beginning of how we can work across systems, across institutions, to develop a strong local talent pipeline to meet the existing and our emerging needs.
While the concept will launch locally, the hope is to take this model and copy it across the state. For WSMV4, I'm Justina Latimer.
Thank you. The press event of this collaborative was covered by News Channel 4, News Channel 5, Fox 17 News, as well as the Tennessean newspaper. The media kit you have in front of you, if you turn right to the center, I'm going to talk about the heart of the collaborative and how we share the story, first locally and then across the state. Next slide, please. This is the TBR MNPD pathway infographic. The collaborative represents an educational and workforce ecosystem in law enforcement that highlights key opportunities for engagement with the Metro Nashville Police as early as elementary and middle school going through high school. It also creates pathways through high school dual enrollment and after high school graduation that includes internships, education and training at our Tcats and our community colleges, as well as opportunities for civilian jobs, as well as commission jobs through the police academy to keep our citizens engaged in law enforcement. So this infographic that you see on the screen in your booklet is the heart of a broader story. I want you to imagine this infographic within a brochure or flyer. Imagine it being given to the parent of an elementary school kid who now sees there's opportunities as early as elementary school to have positive points of career exploration. I want you to now imagine that same infographic given to a high school student by their guidance counselor to learn about opportunities to go to our Tcats and community colleges to continue in that. And then I want you to even imagine it in a poster at Kroger for the citizen that did not realize they could become in a civilian job with Metro Nashville Police or come back to our Tcats and community colleges around this opportunity. We recognize more than ever we need more people engaged in law enforcement. And so while we have developed this model with Metro Nashville Police, our next steps as Academic Affairs is to scale this model across the state, work with other police departments, K-12 systems, community colleges, and Tcats. The other next step, once we begin to scale that up, is that TBR will host a biannual convening where we will bring all of those partners in the state together so that we can identify new partners and share promising practices to keep the collaborative moving forward. Next slide, please. Just to highlight, we had a planning body made up of representatives from all of our stakeholders who worked on this model through January to May. And again, in July, we presented to our internal leadership who supported this model. And then again, the fabulous press event that we had in August, and you can see one of the news pieces covering that effort. Next slide, please. Just going to highlight the infographics. It's easier for the board to just look in the center part of your booklet. The first point is around elementary school. This part is handled by the Metro Nashville Police. And this is where they highlighted different activities such as their Read Me program. They have an adventure camp, and they also do a range of outreach activities. Next slide. For middle school, some of these activities are familiar to us. They have the Police Athletics League, which they've now changed to Police Activities League because everybody doesn't like to work out, so they're trying to be inclusive. So with the PAL program, it's a chance for them to get right into the middle schools, engage those kids in different opportunities. They certainly do the DARE program, and they also have summer camps available. Next slide. In the high school engagement space, the Metro Nashville Police has a Youth Citizens Police Academy that they're working on, which includes a summer camp
What is really helpful is that part of this collaborative has already supported them, that summer camp was free for students to participate. TBR reached out to Metro Action Commission to get them funding. So now those students that completed their camp this summer got paid a minimum wage stipend for going through that, which incentivized young folks to participate in that. They're also developing a cadet program that will be part of a year-long high school opportunity. Next slide. Where TBR is really active in this space is obviously in the dual enrollment, but in two ways. We certainly have our traditional dual enrollment courses that include things like law enforcement, criminal justice, but Metro Nashville Police also has a need for people to work in civilian jobs. So we're now targeting those dual enrollment courses from business to human resources to IT that can lead a young person into civilian jobs so that they stay engaged in law enforcement until they're 21 and old enough to apply for the police academy. Next slide. The other thing I do want to highlight about the high school as a result of this collaborative, TBR reached out to Pencil on behalf of the police department, and Pencil is the organization that will now schedule them to get into all of the high schools so they don't have to handle those logistics themselves, and to make sure they're in the dual enrollment classes, doing career days, and other experiential opportunities. So here, what are the opportunities after high school? There's certainly opportunities for college and career internships. And again, we have highlighted some of the more popular civilian jobs that people can get engaged in while they're going to Tcat or while they're going to one of our community colleges until they're old enough for the police academy. Next slide. I will briefly talk about this in the next update, but one of the things we have in the collaborative is really encouraging people to go into the correctional officer space. We'll talk about the governor has given TBR $5 million for correctional officer funding. You all just approved many of our Tcats and our community colleges offering that. What's important is these are correctional officers in the jails rather than the prisons. So it is a great pipeline to keep them in law enforcement. Next slide. Nashville State has already been doing amazing work in the law enforcement space. So we certainly want to recognize their president, and Brad Cochran, who's been one of our leaders. And here they're talking about different opportunities of degrees that are, again, aligned to those law enforcement opportunities there. Next slide, please. They also have two programs in Nashville State that I think are our leading model that we'll be looking at across the state. One is the Better in Blue, where they're training individuals from 18 years old to be tower guards, bailiffs, jailers, or correctional officers so they can have those types of employment in there. They also have an Educating the Blue program so that a commissioned police officer can come back to the community college and get their 2-year degree in 1 year because they're getting credit for that 1 year in the police academy where they have already crosswalked those courses. Next slide. The North Star is for folks to go to the police academy so that we have great folks serving in community policing. Next slide. So here, we're some of our collaborative partners that I highlighted. Other partners are Power Youth, Metro Action Commission, our Tennessee Sheriff's Association, as well as Pencil are some of the other partners that are already on board now. Next slide. Again, for next steps, we've just had an amazing press event. Our next step is to begin to share these opportunities, particularly with our dual enrollment partners, because they are a part of this partnership, so that high school students know what are the opportunities in civilian. You're an IT student, you love computers, guess what? Police department has a place for you. We also want to make sure our Tcats and our community colleges are promoting these opportunities to come into their related programs as well. Next slide. So again, that is the heart of the infographic around law enforcement and our pathways. I also want to recognize Chief Williams, who spoke earlier. He has been a great partner in this work, and we have already met with the Tennessee Police Chiefs Association, and we will be presenting to them in January so we can bring other police chiefs on board so that we can develop this model across the state. Any questions?
Jonathan, could I just say one quick thing? Yolanda made a brief reference earlier, but this conversation started in no small part with a certain chief deputy whose name just happens to be Dwayne Green, who reached out to say, we want to talk to you guys and get something started. So kudos to your husband. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any other questions? All right.
All right, I will continue to the next focus that was quickly highlighted. Next slide on correctional officer program. Next slide. Again, the governor provided $5 million in funding for us to develop this program, particularly for jails. There's a different kind of training if you want to be a correctional officer in the prison, but what is really important is that this is in partnership with the Tennessee Corrections Institute. TCI oversees all of the jails across the state, and they have been very supportive that they are in really dire need to have enough people due to turnover to come in and serve in those environments. They are also part of teaching a component of the actual curriculum in that model. So they have been working with us and joining us in our work sessions to be a great partner in that work. Next slide. We currently have 24 colleges who have signed up to offer this program. And you can look here just across the west, middle, and east region, which community colleges and Tcats will be offering the program. And we'll talk later about some of them will be working towards offering it in the spring, others in the summer, just dependent on their schedule. Next slide. In terms of the governor's funding, each college will receive $145,000 for operating the program. They will receive recurring faculty costs at $77,000 for one full-time faculty member. They will also get recurring costs of $3,000 for their operation budget. And then they will get non-recurring equipment costs of $65,000 to help support the work that they're doing. And I'm also allocating a portion of the funding for the Center for Workforce Development. So if there are key counties that our colleges are not able to work with, the Center for Workforce Development will provide that customized training in collaboration with TCI. Next slide, please. Just a quick highlight on the Tcat program. When I met with the governor's office, they shared with me that Tcat Elizabethton is the model for this, and they want to see that duplicated across the state. They have been wonderful in sharing their curriculum and being in planning sessions with all of the colleges developing this program. So it is a sustainable model. And again, that program, it has two components to it. Credential 1 is 432 clock hours, and that's for the apprenticeship for the correctional officer. And then the second credential that they earn is 864 clock hours, which is the Master Correctional Officer certificate. And now they are ready to go work in our jails. Next slide. This is just a quick highlight that, again, Tcats are on 2 different cycles. Some will be ready for spring, others in the summer. And the only difference for the cycle is dependent on the capacity at Tcat, or if they were prepping for, say, an accreditation visit, we put them on a later schedule so that they could work towards that. And again, I want to recognize Dr. Tashaka Hollins for being the leading planner for the Tcat portion of this program. Next slide. Our community colleges are aligning their program to the Tcat model. Dr. Tom Sewell, our new Associate Vice Chancellor, is working with a statewide curriculum body to align those courses to make sure it's as close as possible to the Tcat model. And so again, we have multiple community colleges that will be starting that in the spring and the summer moving forward. Next slide. Next slide. Again, we have had multiple planning sessions statewide where we're able to talk to our different colleges around their funding opportunities, the equipment needs, which Tcat Elizabethton has been great in sharing, faculty hires, and the development of the curriculum. And again, we have lots of leaders engaged in the space. I also want to share that one of our new curriculum and workforce strategists, Lacey Krogan, is really helping to coordinate this effort. So these new strategists that we have on board are doing some of the best work around some of these kind of leading edge initiatives that Academic Affairs is leading out. At that point, that is my update on correctional officer. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Keep on keeping on.
All right, next slide, please. EMS, next slide. I'm very excited to talk about the work that is happening in EMS. You all are already aware that Chancellor Titans has been advocating for a more agile, responsive workforce training in the field of EMS for probably a good part of 2 years. The pandemic has certainly shined a light on the important work our first responders are managing and keeping our community safe and healthy. As a part of her advocacy, I have also led several statewide conversations with all of our EMS directors to make sure we had support and consensus to offer other opportunities through our partnerships that I will highlight in a moment, with a special thanks to EMS Director David Blevins, who's been a great thought partner in ensuring we had agreement across the state. As a result of TBR's advocacy, next slide please, legislators supported an amendment to HB 1956, SB 1908, which focused on increasing EMS training centers to 30. In that amendment, as a result of TBR's work, that amendment has where the General Assembly urged for ambulance services operating these EMT, AMT training centers to develop partnerships with TBR colleges wherever that was possible. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how we look to meet the spirit of that amendment so that that was realized in these partnerships. In response, TBR has presented to TASA, and we have also presented the EMS Educators Conference to share an invitation to partner with our colleges. And this is really important because these are ways to keep us engaged and hopefully to meet current needs of those ambulance companies that don't have training centers so they don't see the need to add more, because we are certainly available to support their needs. I also want to get ready to introduce our new Assistant Vice Chancellor, Zachary Adams, who's going to share the focus and the outcomes of our statewide virtual convening that look to kind of cement these partnerships with our partners. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to highlight for you all our 14 colleges who are engaged in these partnerships, and all of them on board to offer these customized, non-credit workforce partnerships with ambulance companies based on the models that Zachary will now present. At this point, I'd like to introduce Zachary Adams.
Good afternoon. As a result of the partnerships that were established through the good work of Chancellor Tidings, we held a virtual convening several weeks ago that included over 70 participants, roughly 50% coming from our colleges, and 35 different EMS companies were represented at that convening. The first half of the convening focused on the training models that TBR has for EMS professionals. And then the second half were breakout sessions for companies to ask more specific questions about the partnerships that they wanted to expand or explore. At the beginning of that convening, we had introductory remarks from both the Chancellor and Senator Lundberg, who has been a champion of EMS, and we were grateful for their support at the top of that call. Next slide, please. Very briefly, the four models that we introduced or reviewed with the EMS providers on the call included both workforce training options, short-term workforce training options, dual enrollment offerings, and our traditional academic programs in this space. We put a particular emphasis on our flexible short-term workforce credentials, as well as our opportunities to leverage dual enrollment to allow high school students to earn their EMS certification by the time that they're 18 so that they can join the workforce in EMS. Next slide, please.
At this time, we'll take any questions on the EMS partnership model.
Hey, if you guys are up for it, I was going to give you a little fascinating perspective because this is all very interesting given my new role. But I thought I could tie some of this together for you in a way that I wouldn't have understood maybe 6 months ago. From nursing all the way to this EMS challenge. So in Chattanooga, the regional hospital is Erlanger Safety Net Hospital. And if you show up there right now, it's hard to get in the ER. The reason it's hard to get in the ER and be seen is because it's hard to hire nurses. And 2 floors of the hospital have been shut down for quite some time. And so what happens is our ambulances drop people off the ER, and often they're just treated as extension staffers at the hospital. What does that create? Well, it creates an ambulance shortage. And so we're a couple ambulances short. We have a whole ambulance ready to roll in Hamilton County, like a new unit, but we can't hire EMTs. And so on both sides, it's pretty fascinating. We also are 77 corrections officers short at our jail. And we run not a private, but a public ambulance service in the whole county, 164 people, and we're about 25 short. One fascinating thing about our system and what it does, and I would just love to see, and I think for sure Vice Chancellor McCormick can be one of the people to help connect these dots, is that while we do an incredible job of providing for the needs of the private sector workforce, it's kind of stunning to me that sometimes government doesn't open up pathways to jobs that we have, for example, in our corner of the state, because we've got major needs across these areas that we've talked about right here, and I'm just not 100% sure that, you know, the left hand's talking to the right hand. And I can, in my corner of the state, fix that pretty quickly. But I just thought y'all might find that interesting, that we're trying to short up on both sides. You know, sooner rather than later, we can probably just get an extra ambulance on the road. It's just interesting for me to have learned we really probably wouldn't need that ambulance if we had enough nurses and we could process people through the ER in a more efficient manner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that's good.
Any other questions on our EMS partnership? But again, I just want to highlight, this is a huge win-win for our state to go from a position of competition to partner together to meet the workforce needs in that EMT, AMT, paramedic space.
I know Senator Lundberg's been pushing for this for quite a while, as our chancellor, so good job, good job.
Quick question. Have a quick question. Oh, there you go. Yes, I'm sorry. Over here. The two, and this seems more geared toward community colleges looking at the list, but and I'm not trying to point out anybody, but there are two that didn't show up on that 11 out of 13 community colleges are on there. Is there a reason why either Nashville or Pellissippi wasn't?
Well, Nashville State does not offer the program. They are looking to offer that.
Okay.
And Pellissippi, since I'm here and the president, I want to make sure I didn't leave them off as a gap. President wave. President went to get a snack. If they're not on it, it's really only because we have the 11 that have the programs. I need to check on Pellissippi, but I do know Nashville, as a result of this work, now is on board to start a program, and I have partnered them with one of the other community colleges to do that.
Actually, Pellissippi does not provide for that because Roane State is our healthcare provider in Knox County. There's just a long-standing history behind that, but that is why.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions? All right, thank you. I will move to the other one.
Last update, yes, please.
All right, great. We want to highlight our USDOL apprenticeship grant. The Department of Labor grant is currently creating new opportunities for apprenticeships across the state and supporting our colleges in areas of advanced manufacturing and supporting those employees. I also want to recognize President Nate Garrett, who wrote this grant and won this grant for academic affairs last year, and then the great work that Zachary Adams, as well as our curriculum and workforce strategists, have done to scale this grant across from 2 colleges up to 10. So I would love Zachary to talk about how they have achieved that work.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. The grant, the apprenticeship grant, is a partnership with Penn College, where I grew up, in my backyard, and the Tennessee Board of Regents. And what makes this grant unique is that it's focused on advanced manufacturing. So the company has to be a manufacturing company. And the second is that the grant requires that the apprenticeships be modularized, which just means that an employer can approach a bookshelf and select different modules from the apprenticeship offering that best suits the needs of their employees. So for instance, I've got a flow chart down at the bottom of the screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, those are traditional occupations that have a traditional apprenticeship. What this grant has allowed our colleges to do is to take those apprenticeable occupations and allow employers to add on, say, something like a leadership training. So if they have individuals who have the technical skills, but they're wanting them to develop their skills as a supervisor, this program is specifically designed for those individuals as well. Next slide, please. Dr. Reed did recognize President Garrett for his work on this grant, but I also want to say that without the sort of hard work laying the infrastructure for this grant opportunity, we wouldn't be at the results we are or projected results for year 2. But under President Garrett's leadership in the first year of the grant, we had 2 colleges spearhead this work, utilizing these apprenticeship dollars, serving 352 workers. And those were Northeast State and Walters State. In year 1 of the grant, we saved employers roughly $380,000 for training expenses. We have leveraged the momentum created in year 1 and our newly hired workforce and curriculum strategists who really act as the technical assistance providers for colleges and employers to understand how is apprenticeship different from your current credit offerings, and what are the advantages to me as an employer and to my employees. And so as a result of that expanded staff capacity, we've had 10 colleges come on board. We're hoping to serve 500 to 700 workers in the advanced manufacturing sector. And we have projected savings to employers of between $950,000 and $1.2 million. So we're really excited about that progress and what our colleges can learn from this grant opportunity to continue those best practices once this grant ends.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Unless anybody has any other comments, did you have something else?
I just wanted to thank you, Regent Burdine. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Unless there's any other business to come before us, we stand adjourned.
Thank you, sir. And this team was bringing the A game this afternoon, to borrow from that earlier reference. So thank you all. We have one final committee meeting this afternoon, and I will once again turn to Regent Green.
Thank you. We are calling our Committee of Personnel and Compensation Committee to order. Secretary Perry, will you please call the roll?
Regent Burdine.
Here.
Chair Lady Green.
Here.
Regent Varlin.
Here.
And Regent White. Madam Chair, your committee is assembled and you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We will go ahead and proceed with our first agenda item, which is our consent agenda. You may recall at our committee chairs meeting, we were briefed on the following 4 policy items, and materials were provided on our website. Unless anyone has a question about those agenda items, we will act on all 4 with one voice vote. The items are promotion amendment recommendation from Chattanooga State Community College, a request to grant tenure and promotion to eligible faculty members at Chattanooga State that were missed due to a clerical error that we did, if you may remember, back in June. The recommendations are made within the requirements of the Tbr policies on tenure and promotion. Second, tenure upon appointment recommendations. Recommendations are made within the requirement of academic tenure for community colleges 5.02.03.70 for 3 faculty members to receive tenure upon appointment. Number 3, faculty promotion corrections at Pellissippi State Community College. A faculty member's starting salary on the June faculty promotion request was incorrectly provided by the college. Therefore, we changed the action to correct the clerical error and to approve the 5% increase on the correct salary. And finally, our faculty promotion increases at Chattanooga State Community College. Chattanooga State mistakenly omitted 4 faculty members from their June promotion list and the corresponding increases. The promotions are detailed in the board materials, and approval of the increase is recommended as this item. Do we have any questions? Okay, we will call for a motion to approve. Thank you, Danny.
I'll second.
Thanks, Miles. And as we were conducting this meeting in person, we will have one voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next agenda on our item The next item on our agenda is faculty emeritus, and we'll call back Dr. Reed, who's spending a lot of time up there, to share these recommendations.
Thank you, Regent Green. I love spending time with you all. So let's talk about our faculty emeritus. This item, faculty emeritus, refers to Tbr Policy 5.02.01.10, which allows college presidents to recommend candidates of retiring faculty for faculty emeritus designation to recognize their distinguished institutional service. There are no specific criteria in the policy, but historically, it has been based on faculty members' length of service, their contributions to the college, their teaching and academic scholarship, and just their overall service to the college. There are no monetary benefits afforded to this designation. However, presidents do have it within their discretion to provide some other benefits such as office space or library privileges. Board members, you may recall that this policy was adjusted about 3 years ago to allow review by the Vice Chancellor and Chancellor prior to board approval and to accept these recommendations from colleges on a quarterly basis rather than an annual basis. The 8 individuals being recommended for emeritus status are listed here, and their bio and details are in your materials, and we are recommending them forward for board approval.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, hearing none, we will call for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Miles. Second? Thanks, Danny. And we will also have a voice vote. All in favors?
Aye.
Great. And all opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. And if there's no other further business to come before the committee, we will adjourn.
Thank you very much, Regent Green. Well, you guys, that finishes our business for this afternoon, but let's do just a bit of housekeeping before we head out. Your committee reports and materials for tomorrow's meeting will be on the TBR website a little later this afternoon. For the committee chairs, a copy of your committee report will be at the front desk of the hotel when we return this evening. Tomorrow morning, we will be back here in this room with a presentation at 9 o'clock from both President Wise about Pellissippi State and President Cheney talking to us about the Tcat at Knoxville, and from there we'll segue into our full board meeting at 9:30. Chancellor and President Wise. President Wise, have you returned from getting your snack? Would you make your way back up here? And I know we've got a great evening in store at the Ruth and Steve West Workforce Development Center with our culinary students. But I also want to add, I want to make sure that everybody tonight, if you haven't had a chance so far, has a chance to talk with both John Lee and John Long. So once again, thank you for being active participants this afternoon. And we also welcome for the first time in person our new president of Cleveland State, Dr. Ty Stone, who has hit the ground running down there, and Dr. David Hicks, who has hit the ground running up in Elizabethton. So make sure you have a chance to reach out to these good folks. So thanks everybody for a good discussion. And President Wise and Chancellor, any closing announcements we need as we head out from here?
Yeah, just a few. A reminder to the Tcat presidents to pick up their books from the workroom in AL 129 if they'd like to do so. If you need help, we got some dollies and carts back there. It's 4:01. That means the hospitality room at the hotel is just opened, and it will be open until 6:15. The bus will leave the hotel at 6:20 to transport folks to the Blount County campus, where we'll have dinner in the Ruth and Steve West Workforce Development Center prepared by the culinary students in our program. Breakfast at the hotel tomorrow morning. We'll have a light continental breakfast here as well. We're glad you're with us and look forward to having dinner tonight in just a little while.
You may be telling us more about this tonight, but what do you want us to look for, pay attention to as we enter this center? And I don't want you to give away the menu, but any highlights, any highlights on the culinary arts program you want us to know about?
Yeah, so this is really their first big show. They've done a couple of dinners over the course of the last week. It's a building that opened a month ago, and the kitchen's opened probably 2 weeks ago. In fact, the afternoon it opened, they competed for the first time in Taste of Blount, which is a local event. Restaurant competition, and they took home 3 top prizes that afternoon. They only entered an appetizer, but they won Best Appetizer from the judges, they won Best Appetizer from the public, and won Best Presentation overall at the event. So it's already an award-winning program. I'm hoping I'm not putting too much pressure on them to deliver tonight, but I'm confident that they will. They're excited that you're going to be there. So that's sort of our culinary hospitality side. The rest of the building is a partnership with Tcat Knoxville. So there are labs for pipe fitting and welding, partnership opportunities around a mechatronics lab for both Tcat and Pellissippi State, and then we've got some IT classes that are going on tonight as well. So brand spanking new facility. We're growing into it as we get all the equipment into it, but we're excited you get a chance to see it. There's plenty of room on the buses. I think we actually have 2 buses, so if you don't want to drive out there, feel free to join the folks on the bus and take advantage of that we're providing. But looking forward to having folks out there.
Thank you. Very
It should be a great dinner.
Thank you.
If you've asked for a vegan or vegetarian dinner, your server will ask you at your plate and can provide that for you.
Thank you very much. We're excited to be there. Thank you, Dr. Wise. Chancellor, any closing comments?
Just looking forward to this evening. Everybody have a good time to fellowship and talk and get to know each other a little bit better. It's so exciting to be in person again for the second time this year. So thank you all.
Absolutely. And we know you have lots of challenges on your plate, but boy, there are a lot of opportunities, and you guys are moving heaven and earth to take advantage of them. So thank you. All right, everybody, break. You've got a little time. 6:20 from the hotel. We'll see you shortly. Thank you all.